Clear spells merge their way into northern areas. These clear skies and light winds means we're likely to see some frost by the time we reach the morning, may even see some icy stretches and some freezing fog patches too. So do take care if you're travelling through the early hours of Tuesday. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around, a strengthening breeze, so that's going to limit any frost across central and southern areas, but once again it is still going to be a fairly chilly night. So a cold and frosty start across northern areas and quite a chilly day on offer. We'll gradually see a change later into the afternoon as cloud and outbreaks of rain move in from the west. Also some cloud and rain moving into western parts of Cornwall too. But elsewhere there should be plenty of dry weather, plenty of sunny spells, though it is going to be a chilly day for all. Bye for now.
We can expect clear skies leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash. We've made loads of winners this year, and you could be our next.
Hi, I'm Angela from Wigan, and I won £30,000 with the Great British Giveaway. It happens to people like me.
For your chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Happy December. Happy Christmas. It's Monday, the 2nd of December, and I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
A laboured relaunch. It's reset time for Sir Keir Starmer after low growth, high migration and a cabinet resignation. The Prime Minister tries to start over with his plan for change. We'll have the latest from Downing Street.
We will indeed. And of course, those allegations against Greg Wallace have split the nation. Some may call it harmless banter, others call it dreadful sexism. Should Wallace be cancelled? And has he dug himself a deeper hole by saying complaints come from women of a certain age? Bit rude. We'll have that debate.
Pardon me. Joe Biden issues an official pardon for his son Hunter, despite promising he wouldn't before the US election. Hunter Biden was set to face sentencing this month on gun and tax convictions. Donald Trump has branded the move an abuse and miscarriage of justice. Is he right?
Tom, you can't wish people a happy Christmas yet.
It's Christmas season. 'Tis the season. I've been listening to Christmas carols all morning. I've been getting... No, not really.
He's lying. He's probably been listening to a podcast.
I actually have, yeah. I read it, well, an audiobook.
An audiobook.
Yeah,
well, that's nice, isn't it? Yeah. Always listening to something, if he's not listening to GBNews, of course, on the radio. But yes, lots to talk about today. I was watching, obviously I've been on my honeymoon with Patrick, and I was sort of watching the news from afar, from a distance. It's all just gone a bit mad, hasn't it? Everything seems to be going wrong, whether it's migration, whether it's this petition, whether it's... good grief, there's been so much going on, this resignation.
Yes.
Rachel Reeves absolutely copping it on the economy. It's just been bonkers.
No, it must be sort of... The cabinet is now in a different shape to when you... From when you went away and came back. We've had growth downgraded. We've had farmers' protests.
Farmers, of course, yes.
No, it's been quite a confluence of circumstances, really. And I suppose this all leads to the question, what is Keir Starmer going to say in his big reset? Although I must say they're denying it's a reset.
More money for the NHS?
Even more?
Possibly. Possibly, or just, you know, reiterating that there will be more money for the NHS.
Is this comms or policy? That's, I suppose, the question.
But if it's true, what they're saying in the papers today, that he's just going to, you know, ignore this little, let's be the fastest growing country in the G7. I mean, that is an admission of failure.
I suppose it is. And that begs another question, because something that we're looking out for in this programme, there's a vote in France, and it will be a vote that could determine whether or not the French government collapses. They've had a torrid time of it recently. Of course, the German government collapsed only a few weeks ago. Could it be that the French government collapses? Well, that vote could be determined this very afternoon. And then that raises questions for the UK. Of course, the government's not going to collapse. The majority's too big. But there is a general sense that things are falling apart.
There is a general sense of that, and we will bring you the drama from France, because it is worth watching. But first, let's get the headlines with Katie Bowen.
Tom, Emily, thank you. A very good afternoon. It's just gone midday. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. Reports of the BBC's handling of complaints about MasterChef presenter Greg Wallace are deeply troubling, the head of a TV workers' union has said. It comes as the BBC is facing questions today over when they were made aware of allegations against Greg Wallace. Former BBC insiders say chiefs at the corporation reportedly knew of allegations against their MasterChef star back in 2012, and bosses were warned about his alleged behaviour 4 times. Mr Wallace prompted further backlash yesterday after saying that the accusations he was facing were coming from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age. In a statement, the BBC said, "We take any issues that are raised with us seriously, and we have robust processes in place to deal with them." Greg Wallace's lawyers say it is entirely false that he engages in behaviour of a sexually harassing nature. To the US, where President Joe Biden has issued an official pardon for his son Hunter, saying he was unfairly prosecuted. Hunter Biden was set to face sentencing this month on gun and tax convictions. He pleaded guilty to tax charges earlier in September and was found guilty of being an illegal drug user in possession of a gun in June. That made him the first child of a sitting president to be convicted of a crime. President Biden said in a statement last night that politics has infected this process, while US President-elect Donald Trump has called the pardon an abuse and miscarriage of justice. Back at home, Sir Keir Starmer is set to reveal his plan for change this week, with the Prime Minister saying it will be the most ambitious yet honest delivery plan in a generation. It's being reported that Mr Starmer will pledge that by March 2029, the NHS will meet its target of carrying out 92% of routine operations and appointments within 18 weeks, a target that has not been achieved for almost a decade. NHS bosses have warned, though, that the target could turn A&E into what they call a war zone. It comes as the Prime Minister has seen an 8-point drop in his net approval rating. Parliamentary Under-Secretary Alex Norris spoke to GB News earlier on.
Won an election in July based on commitments that we made to the public about the change we want to see for our country and they want to see for our country. What we'll be setting out in the days to come is what that change looks like. You know, I think it's reasonable that the government of the day should want to be really candid and honest about delivery. It's not been something that we've seen in recent years, but we are. So that's what we'll be setting out. It's perfectly consistent with our approach at the election, and we think it's the right way to do in order for the public to be able to hold us to account.
Around 100 illegal migrants trying to cross the channel in 2 small boats were intercepted by Border Force officers in the early hours of yesterday morning. It comes as more than 20,000 migrants have crossed the channel since Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister in July, hitting that milestone in 5 months. That's quicker than during Rishi Sunak's time in Number 10, where it took 8.5 months to reach the same figure. However, the Prime Minister accused the Conservatives of opening the borders and promised to cut numbers after record high asylum costs of £5 billion. Shadow Paymaster General Richard Holden commented on the figures earlier on.
We obviously had a Rwanda scheme, which Labour scrapped before we could even get it off the ground, which had provided that proper deterrent. And without a deterrent, you cannot deal with the issue. And it also looks like Labour are basically, as part of this, junking one of those, I think it was one of those missions that Starmer said, which was to end illegal immigration, alongside junking his pledge to make Britain the fastest growing economy in the G7.
A police officer has been charged with causing death by dangerous driving over a crash in which a moped rider was killed. Metropolitan Police Constable Ian Brotherton, who's 32, will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Wednesday. He's also accused of causing death by careless or inconsiderate driving. He's been charged over the death of 26-year-old Christopher de Carvalho Guedes, whose moped was hit by a police car on an emergency call in Enfield, North London, on the 12th of October last year. And just finally, tea firm Typhoo has been brought out of administration after they were filed to appoint administrators last Wednesday. Vapes and batteries maker Supreme has brought the 121-year-old firm. It was announced this morning that they had agreed a rescue deal to buy the historic brand. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Tom and Emily.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past midday, and it's the 2nd of December, so happy Christmas.
After what many may consider to be a torrid first 5 months in office, Sir Keir Starmer, he's looking to reset his government. He's launching the so-called Plan for Change.
Although it looks more like a change of plan. The Prime Minister is set to unveil ambitious targets for the NHS, including ensuring 92% of patients wait no longer than 18 weeks from referral to routine treatments. But he's seemingly sidelined his major pledge, the #1 pledge, to make the UK the fastest growing economy in the G7.
So, is this the great reset the government needs, or is it a sign of desperation?
Well, let's discuss this further with GB News political editor Christopher Hope. And Christopher, I suppose a cynic might think there's been a choice in front of the government. They could go for growth or go for public services, and they've chosen the latter.
Tom, hi Emily. Yeah, well, that's a kind of maybe a false choice if you're in government. They're trying to deliver on these 5 missions that the PM set out when he came into government. Now, they have always said they were going to try and get some measurable targets to show how they're going to get there. The problem they've got is the timing of this does look like they're trying to reset this government's direction after losing a cabinet minister last Friday. The issue with Sue Gray, that went on for days, really, and weeks, in fact, with the Chief of Staff, the freebie row back in the summer. It does look and will be depicted as a reset, even though they say that's not the case. To remind viewers and listeners what those 5 missions are: kickstart economic growth, make Britain a clean energy superpower, take back our streets, that's a crime target, break down barriers to opportunity, that's education, and build an NHS fit for the future. Now, there are very brief bits of this to the weekend newspapers. One of them might be to established 92% of routine operations within 18 months with having those operated within 18 months by 2029. But that could involve scaling back GPs, treatments, dentistry, A&E and the like. And also there's the speculation, say, Telegraph, that he may drop that target you mentioned there, Tom, of being the fastest growing economy in the G7, something which Jeremy Hunt, as the last Chancellor, was keen to trumpet all the time. That may be sidelined, but that is disputed, I think, by briefing from Number 10. So we'll hear the dynamic going through this week. We'll hear more, I think, after the lobby briefing, where my colleague Catherine Forster is, and she'll bring the news to you straight away on your show on GB News. And then there'll be a slight pause in domestic politics as a Qatari state visit Tuesday, Wednesday. But Thursday is the day, I think, when it will be seen as a reset. The government would dispute that, but it will be a reset of this government as they try to take back control over the political agenda.
Any chance he might decide to shuffle people around within the cabinet, or would that be a step too far?
Well, he's been doing a mini reshuffle, hasn't he, since Friday, when, of course, he promoted Heidi Alexander from the courts minister job to being the transport secretary. The rumour is, the best I can give you, and reshuffle rumours go on forever where I work in Westminster, but it'd be really after the May local elections. That's when we're expecting to see movement. In the past, David Lammy's been talked of someone who could be moving on, but he may stay there now, given we heard from the PM's official spokesman, or certainly his press secretary, one of the two, said he'll be there for the full 5-year term of this government, which is a very rare guarantee in politics for any politician, I think. So I think we're going to see that late. I wouldn't expect that on Thursday. Thursday's all about setting measurable targets to allow us as journalists and the wider electorate to judge the progress of this government.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Christopher Hope, our political editor. We'll catch up with you a little later on.
Well, now for more reaction, delighted to be joined by the Labour Member of Parliament for Brent West, Barry Gardner. Barry, thanks so much for joining us. I suppose we've seen a cabinet resignation. We've seen the resignation of the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff in Downing Street. We've seen growth forecasts downgraded, 20,000 illegal migrants across the Channel. It's not been a great start.
Tom, you are wonderful. You know, you started the programme wishing everybody a season's greetings and a Merry Christmas, and then you pour all this doom and gloom and say, oh, the world's going to hell in a handcart. I mean, it's very
Barry,
funny.
people are worried. Barry, this is no joking matter. I mean, you may have a giggle, but people are very worried. I mean, you will have seen the headlines today about how shops are suffering their worst slump since the pandemic in terms of sales. That puts huge numbers of jobs at risk. Also, the usual bump in employment over the Christmas period, that doesn't seem to be materialising. People are very worried.
Yeah, look, people are finding life very hard. And that is the legacy that the last government left. And it's not been helped that there is a £21.9 billion hole in the current spending for this year. So obviously, times are really tough. But, you know, let's pick apart the things that you just talked about. You talked about perhaps getting rid of the aspirations on growth and focusing simply on the health service. Well, if you look at the fact that almost 7 million people are waiting, how are you going to get those people back into work? The point is, if you fix the health service, you actually fix the economy as well, because you're releasing those people back into the productive economy, back into their work, back into jobs where they're producing, you know, things to sell and getting the economy to go around. So these aren't an either or. They're actually both mutually helping each other.
It is interesting, then, that all of the briefing suggests that the Prime Minister will not be using the words that he wants the UK to be the fastest-growing G7 economy. That's something that the Labour Party said throughout the election. It's the answer to many of these questions about how will you fund all of these promises without raising taxes that your party used to say will be the fastest-growing G7 economy. It's expected that the Prime Minister will no longer say that. Why?
look, I don't know what he's going to say, but what I do know is that if you want to grow the economy, you have to have people in work. And they can't be in work if you've got 7 million people, and that is the legacy of the last government, 7 million people waiting for an operation more than 18 weeks. In fact, some of them waiting years for an operation. So it's absolutely right that we focus on that, not just because it's those individuals' lives and careers. They're suffering during this period. Let's not forget that. But it's also about making sure they get back into the economy, back into work. But look at what you said about what was it? You talked about the immigration statistics. Well, if you look at the number of enforced returns and you compare this year with last year, just since the election, the same period, actually this government is 19% up on last year's figures. If you look at the return of offenders, foreign nationals who are offenders in this country, those figures are up 14% on the same period last year. So, you're trying to paint this as doom and gloom, and I understand that's your job. I mean, that's the point here. But I think if you dig down into the statistics, you'll find it's not
just us here, though, painting doom and gloom. I mean, Rachel Reeves, she wasn't received very well, was she, by the CBI and business people who know what they're talking about, people who employ people who create wealth in this country, people who work very hard to produce things that mean that we have money to spend on our public services. These types of people are warning that economic growth is not going to be forthcoming. They're warning that there are going to be up to 125,000 jobs lost simply because of changes to business property relief. Then you've got the national insurance contributions on top of that, and you've got money being taken away from pensioners, the farmers up in arms. I mean, this is not a rosy picture, Barry.
Look, it's not a rosy picture, but it is an inheritance, and I think you have to accept that as well. You can't say, oh, well, this is all started on the 4th of July. This is the inheritance that we have in this country, and that's why people voted for change at the general election. But look, I agree with what you said about the difficulties for business, and I think it's very important that we look at exactly what business rates are doing and the relief that the government is proposing on business rates. I think that's very important. And you ask any retailer, any shopkeeper around the country, and I'm sure that they will welcome that. I flagged before the budget, actually, that there was a problem with putting up the employer's national insurance. And I recognize that, not simply because it means that the businesses have that increased money to find, but also actually because it's a way of shooting yourself in the foot if you're the government.
So that was the wrong policy in your view then, Barry? So that was totally the wrong policy?
Yes, it was, in my view. I understand why, because £3 billion will be gained for the exchequer from it. But if you look at public services, so who's paying that bill? Hospitals are paying that bill, schools are paying that bill, local authorities are paying that bill, government is paying that bill to all the public sector workers. So it's an increasing cost as well as the revenue coming in, which is why I opposed it previously. But I think if you look at the economy and around, then you've got to say, if we can get people back into work because they're no longer sitting on waiting lists in the NHS, that will be a huge boost to the economy and we will get the growth that we're looking.
Growth is dependent essentially only on how well the NHS is doing.
No, of course it's not. No, I didn't say that. But it's a major impact upon it. And it's a major drag on our economy at the moment.
I think some people might sort of just squirm a little bit in their chairs when they hear this phrase, the 22 billion black hole that was left. Because, of course, the OBR didn't say it was 22 billion. The OBR said it was 9 billion. And that's actually less than the amount of borrowing has gone up in the event of the budget. So you could say that there's a larger black hole now than before, because borrowing, of course, has gone up. The debt rule was changed. That allowed you to borrow 25 billion more than previously. And you raised 40 billion in tax rises. So even if you believe there's a 22 billion black hole, that accounts for half of the tax rises. If you believe there's a 9 billion black hole, that's a quarter of the tax rises. And if you take into account the debt rule change, that's the entirety of the tax rises.
Yes, Tom, and your question?
Well, it's not true to say that your tax rises as a result of the £22 billion black hole, is it?
Look, you've just acknowledged that the minimum is that there was and let's remember, this is in year. Okay, this is the current spending budget. We've got to find this money in year, and you've just acknowledged that at a minimum it was £9 billion.
Yeah,
now,
and you raised 40 billion in taxes. So I think people can do the maths themselves.
I don't think it's going to be terribly edifying if we change trade statistics. But look, let's focus on the real issue here. We both agree we need to grow the economy, right? The way in which we can do that is, of course, by ensuring that our businesses, by putting the research and development in place, and the budget was big on R&D and helping companies with R&D. It's the research and development that we need. It's those elements of the economy in biotech, in healthcare, in pharmaceuticals, all those areas of the economy in AI.
Okay. Well, Barry Gardner, hopefully the OBR is wrong, and actually that growth will be, raging, going gangbusters very soon indeed. We've got our fingers crossed. Barry Gardner, Labour MP.
Merry Christmas to you
Merry
too.
Christmas to you.
Very happy Christmas.
Labour MP for Brent West. If we don't speak till then, yes. Merry Christmas.
I don't know. I'm heartily in favour of saying Merry Christmas every single day of the December period.
Because where is this growth coming from? Oh, the NHS, OK, as long as the NHS is fit and proper and all the money's going to the NHS and the public sector, then we're going to be fine. But what are all these warnings about job losses about then?
Yeah, really interesting there also that Barry Gardner was reiterated his opposition to the national insurance tax rise, correctly pointing out that this does hit many different contractors with the government as well. This means government services become more expensive. I mean, if GPs have to pay more for every employee that they hire, I mean, that's a cost going on GP surgery.
I must admit, which is probably not, I probably shouldn't admit this, but there was a time when I was sat on my sun lounger worrying about job losses on my trip.
That's not what you're supposed to have.
I was just watching all this
relaxation.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time I was very relaxed, but I mean, all of these warnings, how expensive it is to hire people, all this talk of people coming out of university and not knowing what on earth to do, whether they can get a job, a decent one, a well-paid one, it's all rather worrying. But, we'll continue.
Yeah, well, soldier on.
Soldier on.
This
That's the British mentality.
Pass. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come.
There is mutiny reportedly mounting at the BBC over these allegations against Greg Wallace. One insider says what we know now so far is just the tip of the iceberg. OK, is it time for Greg Wallace to be cancelled? What do you reckon? We're live outside New Broadcasting House after this.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
What do you think?
Morning. I think we have failed young drivers as a society, and we need to train them better and train them earlier. I think that the idea of stopping them carrying passengers for 6 months is a good idea because you've got peer pressure within a car. So yes, but I think graduated licenses are really difficult. You've got what we call the 3 E's, which is education, educating kids to drive earlier, and engineering, which is making roads better and safer, and then comes enforcement at the end of it. So I think we're failing in these two first ones, the education and the enforcement. I put my kids, all 3 of them, through a thing called Young Driver, which allows under 17s to drive on private land with ADI instructors and learn the craft of driving and all the below the dashboard stuff and hazard awareness long before they try and do this very compressed period of time to learn about driving. I think we're failing them. So I want to see it in schools, and I want to see them being taught much, much earlier.
Nobody's actually pointing the finger of blame, I think, at the young driver, but maybe young drivers don't understand how different it is. You feel you can drive, you've passed your test, and then a load of your friends get in the back, and suddenly the mood is different, the pressure on you as a driver is very different, showing off, just larking around and having a great time. Aisha, how do you feel about the fact that clearly young drivers do need to be protected almost from themselves, don't they?
Well, I do agree with some of what Quentin has just said, especially about starting early and especially about getting young people used to the dangers of being on the road.
GB News, The People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It's 26 minutes past 12. And yes, mutiny is reportedly mounting at the BBC after it emerged bosses knew of misconduct allegations against Greg Wallace dating back as far as 2012.
Well, former BBC insiders claim staff have raised concerns on the corporation as the corporation seeks to manage risks rather than deal with problems.
OK, well, for his part, Greg Wallace has responded to the mounting allegations on social media. Let's take a listen.
In the newspaper, I can see the complaints coming from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age just from Celebrity MasterChef.
It doesn't sound like he likes middle-class women of a certain age.
Is this a bit of a I'm a sort of East End bloke sort of
exactly
thing,
that.
and these sort of prim and proper and prissy people are not, getting my banter.
You got it in one.
Yeah.
You got it in
that's
one.
What it is.
I'm the working class geezer. You know, doesn't matter what I say. These people can't take a joke. These women.
Yeah.
These women can't take a joke. Lighten up, love.
Is
Lighten
there a
up.
nugget of truth there? I don't
Possibly.
know. I don't know.
Possibly there is a nugget of truth. Although, if it's true that these allegations are the tip of the iceberg, then we should be careful before being sympathetic to Greg Wallace. But there you go. Let us know what you think. We're going to go live to New Broadcasting House and speak to GB News reporter Adam Cherry, who's following this story for us. Adam, where are we with this? People at the BBC aren't very happy with how this has been dealt with. Some of these allegations dating back, 12 years and seemingly nothing done.
Yeah, that's right. Some of these allegations go way back to 2011 and 2012. Kirsty Walk and then Emma Kennedy, who won MasterChef in 2012, making claims against Wallace. And then in 2017, Asma Mir, who was a part of the celebrity edition of the show, wrote to one of the bosses who is still working here at Broadcasting House behind me. She wrote to Kate Phillips saying his unacceptable behaviour cannot continue. And just get the quote here, should anything happen in the future, this is Asma Mir in 2017, should anything happen in the future, I don't want to feel guilty when people say, why wasn't anything said before, or for producers or editors to claim they didn't know. And we subsequently heard more complaints in 2022, so there does seem to be a pattern here. Now, of course, you just play the clip of Greg Wallace and his legal team, and he himself thoroughly deny all of these allegations. I'm sure that phrase, middle-class women of a certain age, may come back to haunt him if this continues. And as you say, this is the tip of the iceberg. That perhaps was not the wisest choice of words, but we're in a bit of a blame game here because the BBC are really pointing the finger at the production company. The production company say they've launched an investigation into this, an internal investigation, which Greg Wallace is participating in willingly and cooperating fully. But as you say, this appears to be a growing trend here. And he says, or as you argue, he might say it's really a sort of class thing, and he's just a working class kid who grown up in the East End and is prone to coarse language. But these women and this pattern of behaviour suggests it goes a little bit further than that. Again, he denies it all. And we'll just wait to see the outcome of that investigation. But it's a real PR headache for the BBC either way, because we've been here before, haven't we? Kate Phillips is in charge of unscripted programming, as I say, so she's also responsible for Strictly Come Dancing, which had its own pastoral issues over the last few months. Of course, Hugh Edwards as well, not saying these are on a level, they're not on par, but of course it just shows that the BBC really need to get on top of this stuff And at the moment, it's another serious issue for them that they're not grappling fully.
Yes, very interesting. Adam, thank you very much indeed for bringing us the latest on that. Adam Cherry, there outside New Broadcasting House. I mean, one of the allegations that caught my eye was that he wandered into the MasterChef studio completely butt naked, wearing only a sock on his private parts. This is just an allegation.
Does seem rather peculiar.
Yeah, is that a suitable thing to be doing in the office?
I wouldn't imagine so.
You haven't done that. So,
I haven't done that.
So he shouldn't either.
No, I don't think that's the bar, but...
Sorry, I shouldn't make light of this too much.
No, but on the other hand, I mean, what a prat if that happened. Yeah. If that happened, is the guy trying to intimidate people by walking in like a Wally with a sock on his something that rhymes with Wally, or is he just trying to do a joke? Wally. Is he trying to be the funny guy?
Yeah.
And it's just really missing the mark.
Yeah, I mean, like most women, I don't really like crass comments about figures or sex or whatever coming from, you know, someone who you work with. It's a bit much. It's a bit unpleasant. Of course it is. But I do wonder how many women of a certain age, middle-class women of a certain age wouldn't just tell him to shut up.
Oh, I can't
I can't imagine most women in their 50s or 60s or 40s would let him get away with that. They'd just say, shut up, Greg.
Why did he have to add the words of a certain age? If he'd have just stopped at middle class,
because he wanted to be rude.
Then he could have sort of played. I mean, he left school at 15. He went to work selling vegetables at Covent Garden Market. He grew up in Peckham, suffered abuse as a child. I mean, he had a rough upbringing and worked his way up. And I wonder if there is just a class thing here that he's trying to get across that other people aren't quite getting.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I just don't get offended that easily.
Yeah.
By some bloke saying some crass things. I mean, touching, that is totally inappropriate and that should be dealt with, if that's happened, that is. But sort of the odd crass joke, I mean, really, are women so, you know, easily offended or feel so intimidated by such things? I don't know. I've heard many a woman make crass jokes about sex, I must say.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. How many times has it been the other way around? That, you know...
A lot of women are, you know, sometimes worse than the men when it comes to those kind of jokes, I think.
It is so interesting because it does seem that there are generally different schools of thought over where the line is. And in the media, the line is always drawn at the tightest possible extent of that. Do you see what I mean? Like, there are going to be a bunch of laddish men who think the line is here, and then there'll be quite a few, for want of a better term, let's say middle-class people who think that the line is here, and therefore the media line is here, whereas maybe more than half the office thinks the line is here. I don't know, is that getting too...
Good thing for you at home. Get in touch with your views. We're going to be having a bit of a debate about whether he should be cancelled. Is it game over for Greg Wallace because of these allegations against him, or do you think it's all a bit much? But let us know your thoughts. We should highlight as well that these are unproven allegations, and of course Greg Wallace denies any wrongdoing at all.
But this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come on today's programme. Indeed, we're going to be live outside Downing Street as our reporter has spoken to the Prime Minister's official spokesman. Is there a government reset? That's to come after your headlines with Katie Bowman.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Your top stories this hour. Reports of the BBC's handling of complaints about MasterChef presenter Greg Wallace are deeply troubling, the head of a TV workers' union has said. It comes as the BBC is facing questions today over when they were made aware of allegations against Greg Wallace. Former BBC insiders say chiefs at the corporation reportedly knew about allegations against the MasterChef star back in 2012, and bosses were warned about his alleged behaviour 4 times. Mr Wallace prompted further backlash yesterday after saying that the accusations he was facing were coming from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age. In a statement, the BBC said, "We take any issues that are raised with us seriously, and we have robust processes in place to deal with them." Greg Wallace's lawyers say it is entirely false that he engages in behaviour of a sexually harassing nature. To the US, where President Joe Biden has issued an official pardon for his son Hunter, saying he was unfairly prosecuted. Hunter Biden was set to face sentencing this month on gun and tax convictions. He pleaded guilty to tax charges earlier in September, was found guilty of being an illegal drug user in possession of a gun in June. That made him the first child of a sitting president to be convicted of a crime. President Biden said in a statement last night that politics has infected this process, while the US President-elect Donald Trump has called the pardon an abuse and miscarriage of justice. Back at home, Sir Keir Starmer is set to reveal his plan for change this week, with the Prime Minister saying it will be the most ambitious yet honest delivery plan in a generation. It's being reported that Mr Starmer will pledge that by March 2029, the NHS will meet its target of carrying out 92% of routine operations and appointments within 18 weeks, a target that has not been achieved for almost a decade. NHS bosses have warned, though, that the target could turn A&E into what they call a war zone. It comes as the Prime Minister has seen an 8-point drop in his net approval rating. Parliamentary Under-Secretary Alex Norris spoke to GB News earlier on.
Won an election in July based on commitments that we made to the public about the change we want to see for our country and they want to see for our country. What we'll be setting out in the days to come is what that change looks like. You know, I think it's reasonable that the government of the day should want to be really candid and honest about delivery. It's not been something that we've seen in recent years, but we are. So that's what we'll be setting out. It's perfectly consistent with our approach at the election, and we think it's the right way to do in order for the public to be able to hold us to account.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be quite a cloudy start to the week with some rain at times. There'll also be some brighter weather, but generally turning chillier as we see those brighter spells. That's all because of this cold northerly airstream which is slowly crossing the country, bringing us some wintry showers at times in the north. So plenty of showers around coastal areas, particularly Northern Ireland, Scotland. As I say, these turning wintry mainly across high ground in Scotland. A fair amount of cloud across the central slice of the UK. This bringing in some rain at times, which could be heavy at times too. Generally largely dry and bright across Northern Ireland and southern parts of England too. But it is a fairly chilly day, slightly milder across the south, but feeling particularly cold across northeast Scotland with a brisk northerly wind, making things feel a lot chillier. So as we head into the evening, there'll still be plenty of showers around, still falling fairly wintry across high ground, across the Highlands of Scotland. Still a few showers feeding in around coast of Northern Ireland, but fairly dry inland. And elsewhere, there's plenty of cloud around this, bringing some drips and drabs of rain and drizzle at times too. But as we head through into the course of the evening and overnight, we'll see plenty of clear spells merge their way into northern areas. These clear skies and light winds means we're likely to see some frost by the time we reach the morning, may even see some icy stretches and some freezing fog patches too. So do take care if you're travelling through the early hours of Tuesday. Elsewhere, fair amount of cloud around, a strengthening breeze. So that's going to limit any frost across central and southern areas. But once again, it is still going to be a fairly chilly night. So a cold and frosty start across northern areas and quite a chilly day on offer. We'll gradually see a change later into the afternoon as cloud and outbreaks of rain move in from the west. Also some cloud and rain moving into western parts of Cornwall too. But elsewhere there should be plenty of dry weather, plenty of sunny spells, though it is going to be a chilly day for all. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Northbound on the A1M, there is a closure causing long delays due to an accident and spillage. It's from Stevenage at Junction 8 through to Junction 9, delays to 7 for Stevenage South. It's also slow southbound as traffic looks across. Southbound on the M3, there's queue in traffic to an earlier accident from Junctions 4 through to Junction 4A. Northbound on the M5, 2 lanes are closed, causing slow traffic due to an accident from 17 for Cribbs Causeway through to Aztec West at Junction 16. Eastbound on the M4, a lane closure whilst a vehicle has a tyre changed from Bath at 18 through to Chippenham at 17, but traffic coping well. Very slow though for the northbound side of the M6. There are 3 lanes closed from 18 through to 19 for Knutsford due to an accident. It is adding 1 hour 30 to your journey.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 39 minutes past midday, and we're going to go straight to Downing Street, where our political correspondent, Catherine Forster, has been attending an official briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesman. Catherine, what have we learned?
Yes, good afternoon. A very, very long lobby briefing for journalists. We were in there for about an hour, incredibly long. Lots of interesting stuff coming out of it. First of all, on Greg Wallace, of course, a lot of controversy over what he may or may not have said over many years. The Prime Minister's spokesman said that of the comments over the weekend that they were deeply inappropriate and misogynistic. I take it he was referring to Wallace's comments that things had been said by middle-aged women of a certain age. The Prime Minister's spokesman making it clear that they take a very dim view of those comments, also saying that it's important that taxpayers have confidence that the BBC are taking these issues seriously. On Louise Haigh, of course, the former Transport Secretary, she resigned early on Friday morning. We asked whether she would get full severance pay. We were told that the rules would be followed on that. But it is somewhat unclear because the government have said that they will look into ministerial severance pay. So watch this space, I would say, on that. But a lot of the conversation was centred around this plan for change that the Prime Minister is going to unveil in this big speech that he's giving on Thursday. They are insistent that growth is still their number one mission. They used to say that they'd get the highest growth in the G7. It sounds very much like they might not be using that phrase. Perhaps they've realised that you can't actually control the growth in the 6 other countries. And also, of course, since the budget, we've had very, very gloomy projections of growth going forwards, which will seriously impact all the government's plans if this growth doesn't materialise. Also, a lot of conversation around migration because we are hearing some targets being set and we're likely to get more on Thursday, particularly around the NHS, that they want to hit targets of 92% of routine operations being carried out within 18 weeks by 2029, but no specific targets on migration, either legal or illegal. That they feel is not appropriate. I guess they're looking at pledges that have been made in the past, getting legal migration to the tens of thousands, and of course we saw that instead it surged to 906,000 in the year to the end of June 2023. But I also said to the Prime Minister's spokesman, was migration an afterthought basically for Labour, because in Keir Starmer's 5 missions migration was not mentioned at all. Then that was expanded and illegal migration was added on as a sort of 6th one in his first steps for change. They talk about smashing the gangs, but there again we've had 20,000 people cross the Channel illegally in small boats since Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. They're very, very keen to talk about all the things that they are doing, but the numbers at the moment are heading in the wrong direction.
Aren't there, coming from number 10 on the issue of immigration? It was last week, wasn't it, that Sir Keir Starmer said the experiment of mass immigration was not an accident, it was by design. He sounded rather right-wing on the issue of immigration and how he wanted to get that down. But then we don't actually hear really the practicalities of how that will happen. And we certainly don't get a sniff of a target.
No, indeed. They're talking about dealing with the underlying issues, that we have to train our own people. We've been hearing this sort of thing for many years, haven't we? I mean, going back to British jobs for British workers, but this sort of stuff takes a long, long time. The most we could get out of the Prime Minister's spokesman was that they do want to get net migration down significantly. They clearly also want to get illegal migration down significantly. And I think for all that it clearly wasn't a priority for Starmer a year or two ago, it absolutely is now, because they are realising just how angry people are both about the boats and the levels of legal migration in this country, and they're realising that they have to do something, because the Conservatives were punished for not stopping the boats for the levels of migration, and Labour no doubt will equally be punished. All the while, of course, they're very aware of Nigel Farage potentially also, we hear, getting millions from Elon Musk, and Reform rising in the polls just as Labour are falling.
Really, really fascinating situation there. And just finally, Catherine, with this big reset, I know the government doesn't want to call it a reset, but let's say that it is. Why do you think it's happening now, this week? Because, I mean, we could have almost picked any week since the Labour Party came to power when there'd been something that perhaps required a bit of a reset.
Well, yes, indeed. Morgan McSweeney and Pat McFadden thrashed out the details. Now, there's been some reports that happened in a garden over tequila. The Prime Minister's spokesman has knocked that down. I'm not completely sure why now, to be honest. But the thing is, the polls, Labour are continuing to plunge in the polls. The Conservatives are going up. Reform are going up. Labour are losing council seats, and there are local elections coming next May. They've had a very, very rocky 5 months. The budget, growth, their central mission. The budget, many people would say, is going to depress growth. If anything, it's been very, very difficult. OK, they had a really poor economic inheritance, but they have had a number of unforced errors too. I think they want to try to get back on the front foot. They want to try to convince us that we are going to feel better off this Parliament, that the country's going to feel less broken. Let's hope they can turn things around.
Well, we'll all have our fingers crossed. Catherine Forster, live from Downing Street. Thanks so much for joining us.
Barry Gardiner thinks it's all fun and games. Yeah. Giggling away. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain. You don't mind a little giggle, do you? Anyway, lots more coming up on today's show. We're going to be heading over to France because Marine Le Pen's party is threatening to bring down the government today over in France. A no confidence vote could be triggered in the next hour. We'll have all the details. This matters.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Joined by international life coach Cheryl Findlay, who has joined forces with a Liverpool business owner, Kate Hill, of sustainable sportswear brand Lola Star, to empower women and inspire women across the nation. And to celebrate this partnership with the new Lola Star collection, the two will be hosting an exclusive event next Saturday.
The sportswear brand was launched after, well, your story. You lost how much weight?
So 16 stone, which is over £220, which
wow.
I know is quite significant. But during that kind of decade-long journey, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about what it takes to be successful, to be happy, to be well, and to just live an incredible life every day.
Are you giving them goals to work towards or helping them structure their life?
Yeah, so I don't give out goals, absolutely not. It's all about whatever an individual wants. So what we do to begin with is we understand, like, where are you now? Where are you thriving? Where do you feel really happy and excited in your life? And what's lacking? Like, where would you like to feel better? Where would you like to improve? And then we take it from there.
I'd love to take that on board. I'd love to be my true self and fulfil my potential. So have you got any practical tips on how to do that?
Yeah, so we start with clarity, right? Like, you need to know, it's such a busy, fast-paced world we live in. There's so much sensory overload. It would be so easy to be distracted. So we need to kind of quiet all that noise down and start with, where do I want to focus? Pick 2 or 3 things. Where do I want to focus? And then we define the goal. What would I like that area of my life to look, not just look like, but feel like? And then we take it from there. So that's where you would start. I actually had a cancer diagnosis in 2019.
Oh.
And I just decided if I was going to be lucky enough to be on the other side of it, I wasn't going to play small anymore.
GB News, the people's
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 10 to 1, and the Paris stock market fell at the start of trading today as a budget standoff leaves the French government at a serious risk of collapse.
Yeah, given that he lacks a majority, Prime Minister Michel Barnier looks set to use his executive powers to force through his government's budget plans, but this will expose him to a no-confidence vote, which could be triggered in the next hour. So we could see the French government collapse in the next hour. Is that right?
Well, poor Michel Barnier. Let's get the details with Peter Allen, a journalist in Paris now. Because, Peter, this is going to be a pretty treacherous moment for the Prime Minister, and it could lead to a no-confidence vote later this week.
Yes, potentially the French government will collapse this week, I would say. I think within the next hour is unlikely. What will happen soon is that Michel Barnier has to decide whether he's going to push through his social security budget as a presidential decree. Of course, the man who's really be doing that will be President Emmanuel Macron himself. What will happen then is that Parliament, the French Parliament, will undoubtedly say that, look, we want a vote on all this. And the way we'll have a vote will be to introduce a no-confidence motion. That will take 48 hours before it's heard. So it'll be a little bit longer than an hour. But Monsieur Barnier is in a lot of trouble at the moment. And certainly his government doesn't look as though, let's say it's not going to last until Christmas, I think would be a pretty fair summary of the whole situation at the moment.
Very interesting indeed. So what's the process exactly? I mean, is there anything comparable in this country, really, to what's going on in France? And how much power does Marine Le Pen have in all this?
Well, the main thing to remember is that the French system is very much a presidential system. Clearly, Britain's head of state is His Majesty the King. Over here, it's Emmanuel Macron. And the 1958 Constitution of the Fifth Republic very much makes the president the all-powerful figure. And Parliament is really just a sort of nothing like as important as the British Parliament. Because of that, you get a lot of hot air, you get a lot of votes, and in the end, the president decides. So the process as far as Emmanuel Macron's latest tactics to get his social security budget through is concerned is to introduce a decree. He's been doing that a lot since he came to power in 2017. People hate it for it. They accuse him of being undemocratic. They accuse him of not listening to the majority of the French people. This is where Marine Le Pen comes in. Of course, her party did very well in European elections this year. Emmanuel Macron bought in a snap general election, a parliamentary election. Who came first? The left. There was a feeling that the right would do extremely well, but the left are completely ignored at the moment. They're not allowed any power at all. The biggest party in the National Assembly is Marine Le Pen's National Rally.
That's very interesting. I hope we can catch up with you a little bit later to see exactly what happens and where we are by the end of this week. Peter Allen there from Paris.
Well, it's good afternoon, Britain. Plenty more to come.
start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be quite a cloudy start to the week with some rain at times. There'll also be some brighter weather, but generally turning chillier as we see those brighter spells. That's all because of this cold northerly airstream which is slowly crossing the country, bringing us some wintry showers at times in the north. So plenty of showers around coastal areas, particularly Northern Ireland, Scotland. As I say, these turning wintry mainly across high ground in Scotland. A fair amount of cloud across the central slice of the UK. This bringing in some rain at times, which could be heavy at times too. Generally largely dry and bright across Northern Ireland and southern parts of England too. But it is a fairly chilly day, slightly milder across the south, but feeling particularly cold across northeast Scotland with a brisk northerly wind, making things feel a lot chillier. So as we head into the evening, there'll still be plenty of showers around, still falling fairly wintry across high ground, across the Highlands of Scotland. Still a few showers feeding in around coast of Northern Ireland, but fairly dry inland. And elsewhere, there's plenty of cloud around this, bringing some drips and drabs of rain and drizzle at times too. But as we head through into the course of the evening and overnight, we'll see plenty of clear spells merge their way into northern areas. These clear skies and light winds means we're likely to see some frost by the time we reach the morning, may even see some icy stretches and some freezing fog patches too. So do take care if you're travelling through the early hours of Tuesday. Elsewhere, fair amount of cloud around, a strengthening breeze. So that's going to limit any frost across central and southern areas. But once again, it is still going to be a fairly chilly night. So a cold and frosty start across northern areas and quite a chilly day on offer. We'll gradually see a change later into the afternoon as cloud and outbreaks of rain move in from the west. Also some cloud and rain moving into western parts of Cornwall too. But elsewhere there should be plenty of dry weather, plenty of sunny spells, though it is going to be a chilly day for all. Bye for now.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For your chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
A Jaguar has ditched its growling big cat logo as part of what can only be described as a woke rebrand. The badge that has been used for decades, look at it, beautiful, on the bonnets of luxury cars has been swapped for a curved geometric J badge. They've also released a brand new advert, look at it, for their rebrand, which prompted Elon Musk to ask if the company actually sold cars. I thought this was a wind-up. It's not. It's true. Joining me now to discuss this is the motor and journalist Amanda Stratton. Amanda, what on earth is going on at Jaguar? The car of James Bond, Batman, Arthur Daley has gone off the scale woke. Please make me make sense of it.
The E-Type is an absolutely iconic car, and it's important that people remember that, in fact, in its heyday, Jaguar was an incredibly prestigious brand, more so really than other British brands like Aston Martin, for example. But, you know, people in the industry are left sort of scratching their heads because you need to do something bold, you need to do something that catches people's attention, but you also need to stay true to who you are and what you are, and I'm not sure that this is it.
Amanda, that could be an advert for anything. It could be cat food. It could be Karl Lagerfeld. It could be literally anything apart from a Jag. Well, I mean, honestly, I mean, OK, we're talking about it. So we are talking about it, but we're not talking about it for the right reasons, are we?
And I think if I was going to be speculative here, I would like to think that this is actually all part of a cunning plan to get everybody talking about it. So when they do launch the first new car that we're going to see, which, you know, people have been waiting, as I say, since 2001.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's now 1 o'clock on Monday, the 2nd of December. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Well, a laboured relaunch. It's a reset time for Sir Keir Starmer after low growth, high migration and a cabinet resignation. The Prime Minister tries to start over with his plan for change and insists growth is still the #1 priority for his government.
Allegations against Greg Wallace have split the nation. While some call it harmless banter, others call it dreadful sexism. Should Wallace be cancelled? And has he dug himself a deeper hole by saying his complainants are all women of a certain age? We'll have that debate.
We will indeed. And pardon me, Joe Biden, he issues an official pardon for his son Hunter, despite promising he absolutely would not before the election. Now, Hunter Biden was set to face sentencing this month on gun and tax convictions. Donald Trump brands the move abuse and a miscarriage of justice. Is he right? And I was reading the newspapers this morning, as you do, and the Oxford University Press has released its Words of the Year. So I thought I'd put Tom on the spot. He likes a test.
This is genuine.
You like a quiz?
During the ad break, Emily was like, "Have you seen this article?" I'm like, "No, I haven't read that one." And she was like, "OK, I'm going to test you. As soon as we're live, I'm going to test you." I asked, "Could you not test me off air?" No, it's going to happen live on air in front of a grateful nation.
OK, so what does brain rot mean?
Oh, brain rot is when you sort of... if you look at too many things on the internet, and if they're just sort of silly things that are of no consequence, you develop brain rot. It's like your brain has dribbled through your ears.
Absolutely it is. Mental deterioration due to the overconsumption of online content, something that you suffer from regularly. Demure.
Demure, very mindful, very demure, very cutesy. That's a TikTok meme that came about.
It's gone viral.
It went completely viral, and people sort of say it's sort of, I don't know, smooth and serene settings.
Absolutely right. And I'll do one more.
Okay.
Dynamic pricing. Apparently that's a word of the year.
Dynamic pricing. Well,
Two words.
This will be to do with the United States, because there's been a lot of criticism that during disasters prices rise. The idea is, well, this is the market mechanism. The price goes up,
Keep it snappy,
and therefore
Tom.
more supply comes in. People have decried it as price gouging. Others say that dynamic pricing is necessary. It also happens, like Uber, for example. The prices go up when it rains.
Price variation reflecting demand is what Tom's tried to say.
Yeah, is that what they say?
What it is.
OK. Well, I mean, why
That's
not
what it is.
use
Anyway.
100 words where one would do? I'm thoroughly in favour of that sort of...
Tom Verbose Harwood is what my producer is currently saying about you, Tom.
No, that's so very
Why
true.
use one word when you can use 25, eh?
Absolutely.
It's always lovely. But there are many more of these words, and I have to say they're not as woke as they usually are.
Really?
These are just sort of, you know, normal words.
Normal words like brain rot.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's not woke, is it?
Well, no, that's certainly true. Well, let's try and avoid any sort of brain rot and stimulate your synapses with the latest headlines with Katie Bowen.
Tom, Emily, thank you, and a very good afternoon. It's just gone 1 o'clock. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. In the last half an hour, Downing Street has said that comments made by Greg Wallace on social media over the weekend were inappropriate and misogynistic. The MasterChef star is facing allegations of inappropriate behaviour, and yesterday he said that the accusations he was facing were coming from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age. The comments from Downing Street come as the BBC is facing questions today after former insiders say chiefs at the corporation reportedly knew about the allegations back in 2012, and bosses were warned about his alleged behaviour 4 times. In a statement, the BBC said, "We take any issues that are raised with us seriously, and we have robust processes in place to deal with them." Greg Wallace's lawyers say it is entirely false that he engages in behaviour of a sexually harassing nature. To the US, where President Joe Biden has issued an official pardon for his son Hunter, saying he was unfairly prosecuted. Hunter Biden was set to face sentencing this month on gun and tax convictions. He pleaded guilty to tax charges earlier in September and was found guilty of being an illegal drug user in possession of a gun in June. That made him the first child of a sitting president to be convicted of a crime. President Biden said in a statement last night that politics has infected this process, while US President-elect Donald Trump has called the pardon an abuse and miscarriage of justice. Back at home, Sir Keir Starmer is set to reveal his plan for change this week, with the Prime Minister saying it will be the most ambitious yet honest delivery plan in a generation. It's being reported that Mr Starmer will pledge that by March 2029, the NHS will meet its target of carrying out 92% of routine operations and appointments within 18 weeks, a target that has not been achieved for almost a decade. NHS bosses have warned, though, that the target could turn A&E into what they call a war zone. It comes as the Prime Minister has seen an 8-point drop in his net approval rating. Parliamentary Under-Secretary Alex Norris spoke to GB News earlier on.
Won an election in July based on commitments that we made to the public about the change we want to see for our country and they want to see for our country. What we'll be setting out in the days to come is what that change looks like. You know, I think it's reasonable that the government of the day should want to be really candid and honest about delivery. It's not been something that we've seen in recent years, but we are. So that's what we'll be setting out. It's perfectly consistent with our approach at the election, and we think it's the right way to do in order for the public to be able to hold us to account.
Over to France, where a no-confidence vote, which could bring down the French government, is expected to be triggered this afternoon. Jordan Bardella, the president of Marine Le Pen's party National Rally, say they will trigger a no-confidence vote over what they call the government's budget of punishment. Paris's stock market fell sharply this morning over the political situation. A police officer has been charged with causing death by dangerous driving over a crash in which a moped rider was killed. Metropolitan Police Constable Ian Brotherton, who's 32, will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Wednesday. He's also accused of causing death by careless or inconsiderate driving. He's been charged over the death of 26-year-old Christopher de Carvalho Guedes, whose moped was hit by a police car on an emergency call in Enfield, North London, on the 12th of October last year. Tea firm Typhoo has been brought out of administration after they filed to appoint administrators last Wednesday. Vapes and batteries maker Supreme has bought the 120-year-old firm. It was announced this morning that they had agreed a rescue deal to buy the historic brand. And just briefly, the Met Office has warned that freezing temperatures are set to return this week after a mild weekend of weather conditions. It could plunge to as low as -7 degrees Celsius in some parts of the country this week, with extensive frost expected. The Met Office has said that there is some potential for disruption, with the wintry conditions bringing a risk of icy stretches and some dense freezing fog. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 7 minutes past 1. And after what many consider to be a torrid first 5 months in office, Sir Keir Starmer is looking to reset his government as he launches his so-called plan for change.
Yes, the Prime Minister is set to unveil ambitious targets for the NHS, and he insists that growth remains the government's #1 priority.
So is this the great reset that the government needs? Is this his plan for change, or is it just a radical change of plan? Well, let's cross to our GB News political correspondent, Olivia Utley, for the very latest. Olivia!
Well, the Prime Minister
sorry, I know there's a delay on the line. No, do go ahead.
Well, the Prime Minister has only been in office for 150 days, so it's not quite the moment that you would expect to have a reset. But generally, those 150 days have been believed to be rather bumpy, which is why the Prime Minister is making this great speech on Thursday. We're expecting the Prime Minister's speech to be essentially some more concrete targets based on the 5 missions that he talked about when he was leader of the opposition. So those are going to be on the economy, on healthcare, on education, on crime. time and on the net zero target. Now, on the economy, things aren't looking great. The CBI have updated their forecast and are now predicting pretty slow growth for the UK after Rachel Reeves's budget. We've also heard from plenty of business leaders who really don't like what was in the budget, particularly that rise on national insurance contributions for employers, which lots of businesses have argued are going to mean that they will have to sack some of their workers or at the very least not hire so many workers. There is also a suggestion that one of the reasons that the Prime Minister is making this speech is to kind of reframe his targets for the economy. He has previously said that he wants the UK to be the highest growing economy in the G7. It now looks unlikely that that's going to happen, which is why many think the Prime Minister is now talking about making achievable goals, making real differences to people's everyday lives. It sounds as though that target for highest growth in the G7 is going to be sidelined a little bit. There is also a bold, ambitious target from the Prime Minister on NHS waiting lists. He wants to make sure that the target for operations, 92% of operations, routine operations done, is achieved. But there's a really interesting report in the Times today suggesting that if NHS resources are diverted into achieving that target, which they would be if it was on this list for Keir Starmer, they would be redirected away from A&E, mental health services, etc. And some doctors have gone as far as to say that A&E would become a war zone. It's an interesting tactic from the Prime Minister, trying to sort of set his, just make it so that his success is judged off these specific 5 targets. It's actually very, very similar to what Rishi Sunak did at the beginning of 2023. He talked about 5 targets. He asked voters to judge him on those targets. He did manage to get interest rates down. He managed to get inflation down. But otherwise, it was generally seen by the public that he had failed on those 5 targets, which might be one of the reasons why he lost the election. Really, really interesting that Keir Starmer is doing something so similar just 150 days into his time in office. Is he going to live to regret it?
Now, that's a very good question, Olivia. But we've also heard in the last half hour or so from Number 10's spokesperson, from Keir Starmer's spokesperson, about this whole MasterChef Greg Wallace situation and all the allegations against him. We also heard that Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, has already spoken to the BBC about all of this. They're really getting involved.
Getting very, very involved, more so than you might expect. As you mentioned earlier in your headlines, this is a story which has split the nation. Some people feel that it shouldn't really be front page news given everything else that's been going on. But Number 10 clearly feel that it's very important indeed. Lisa Nandy has talked about, already spoken to the BBC. She's talked to them about the culture review that they're doing at the moment into workplace culture and practices. This is very, very similar to something that was carried out less than 10 years ago, and it's quite difficult to say that the recommendations made in that review in 2013 have made any tangible difference. It feels as though the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, is now putting pressure on the BBC to make sure that the review this time is different from the review just 10 years ago. Meanwhile, we've had the Prime Minister's official spokesman saying that the comments that Greg Wallace made over the weekend, which we can assume are those comments saying that the criticism against him, the allegations against him, were from middle-class women of a certain age, were deeply inappropriate and misogynistic. Number 10 hasn't actually gone as far as to answer those people suggesting that MasterChef should be pulled off air as a result of Greg Wallace's claims. But it's really interesting that the Prime Minister and his official spokesman are getting so involved at this stage.
Yeah, it's extraordinary how these things snowball into politics and everything else. I mean, now, yes, calls for the BBC to stop MasterChef from being aired, to pull it from the channel. It's quite extraordinary.
No, really, really strange. But I suppose there are questions to be raised about why is the government sticking its oar in? I mean, given the state of the economy, given the state of... We're learning, of course, 20,000 illegal migrants crossed since the election. I mean, aren't there bigger things for the Prime Minister to be using his time on?
Well, I think the Prime Minister would argue he is doing this big reset speech on Thursday. We are expecting to hear from the Home Secretary later this afternoon on immigration. And to be fair to the official spokesman, he only talked about this when he was pressed by journalists at a lobby meeting this morning. All of that said, it is really interesting that the Prime Minister's official spokesman has weighed in. Yes, you would probably expect to hear from Lisa Nandy. It's perhaps no surprise that she is putting pressure on the BBC to hurry up with this investigation and perhaps come to more concrete policy recommendations than the very, very similar review 10 years ago. But the fact that the Prime Minister himself is getting involved, the fact that he's commenting at all, yes, I agree, Tom, some people would argue that's not perhaps the best use of government time with so much else going on.
Yes, well, Olivia Rutley, thank you very much indeed. Olivia there outside number 10 Downing Street for us.
Indeed, but we're going to cross to stateside now in a shocking U-turn. The United States President Joe Biden, yes, he is still the president, he's issued a pardon, an official pardon for his son Hunter, describing the prosecution as unfair.
Yes, so the 54-year-old faced up to 17 years in federal prison, this over tax and firearms charges.
Well, let's get more now with the Professor of International Politics at the University of Birmingham, David Dunn. David, thanks for joining us. I mean, it is a little strange to us over here in the UK. You think about these political pardons, but of course they do happen. But this is one the president promised not to make.
Yes, certainly it looks bad for Joe Biden and for Joe Biden's record, having spent a year and more saying that he would not pardon his son, and the White House continued to say that until really very recently. And then over the Thanksgiving weekend, we hear that his family got together and decided that they would do that. And of course, it goes further than that, because it's not just a pardon for the specific things for which Hunter Biden has been convicted. It actually is a pardon for any criminal activity over a nearly 11-year period. So it actually tries to fortify his son against future prosecutions, which is an extension of the Convention on the Use of Pardons. So it's quite a wide-ranging and sweeping decision that Biden has made. And it's the one that gets criticism, understandably, from the Republicans, but also the Democrats are half supportive of this and half quite critical of it in terms of actually undermining norms in the way in which the use of the pardon has been used. So it's a very controversial decision.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it, when he insisted he wasn't going to do this. I mean, therefore, people are, all over the internet calling him a liar, Joe Biden, in his last month or so in office. But some of the language used in his statement, Joe Biden's statement, sounds awfully similar to what Donald Trump has been saying about his own court dealings.
Well, I think what we've got to a situation now is that the legal system in America is highly politicized. I mean, Trump pardoned one of his family members when he was president last time round. And the reason that Biden says he is doing this now is because he fears what Donald Trump will do when he gets the keys to the White House in a few weeks' time. I think it's fair to say that Biden is pledged to not to pardon his son would have been carried out had he won the election. But what he fears now, when he looks at the way in which the administration of the incoming Trump team have been staffed with people who are hell-bent on retribution, means that actually he's trying to fortify not just Hunter but himself against possible persecution.
But the language, David, in this statement about political opponents in Congress instigated this to attack me and oppose my election, the sort of talk of sort of lawfare, really, and unfair prosecution, persecution and all of this. It does sound like it's out of the Donald Trump book.
It does, and that's where America has got to now. There are many legal authorities, including the former Attorney General Eric Holder, who said that actually Hunter wouldn't have been prosecuted and wouldn't have been given the sentences that he has been suggested to get if it wasn't for the fact that he was the president's son. So there is a degree to which the American justice system has become highly politicized, and I think we can expect it to get much more so in the next 4 years.
I suppose that is also a line from the Republicans. They'll say, well, look at the Stormy Daniels case in New York, look at all of the prosecutions brought against Donald Trump. They'll say that those were equally political, going after a political candidate.
I think that's particularly the case with the legally less serious case in New York over the so-called hush money case. I think the boxes and boxes of secret documents that he refused to hand back suggest that there was real substance there, as indeed the plan on the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. But again, what we see is that actually Americans are happy to allow Donald Trump to have all those charges dropped. So there is no equality before the law in American politics, it seems, whereby people who was a convicted felon on the first case and faced very serious charges has had all those charges against him dropped. And similarly, we have Trump promising to come in and free all the insurrectionists who are guilty of very grave violence against the police forces around the Capitol building 4 years ago, are likely to be pardoned as well. So we have a very politicized situation in America where the rule of law doesn't seem to be applied equally. Donald Trump now actually will have, when he comes into office, more political power and actual power than George III ever dreamed of. So you wonder why the Americans had the revolution in the first place, really.
Yes, I always thought that George III gets a really bad rap. After all, it was Parliament that was passing and asking for these tax rises rather than the King, and yet all of the... initially, in 1773, you had the American revolutionaries sort of saying, please, King George, save us from the dastardly will of Parliament. And then he became the hate figure later in the Revolution. I do sort of feel sorry for King George sometimes.
You feel
it was Lord North. It was Lord North's Parliament that brought the measures in. You're quite right. But actually, the Parliament, we could argue about this, Tom, Parliament were justified in trying to get the Americans to contribute towards what had been a very expensive war, the 7 Years' War, that actually Britain was in massive debt as a consequence of. So why the colonialists couldn't chip in to pay for what was paying for their security is another matter entirely. But that's a different question, perhaps.
Well, thank you very much for your time. David Dunn, Professor of International Politics at the University of Birmingham. Good to speak to you. I'm wondering... Sorry, I know you were having a little chit-chat about the history.
We can park
that. I was wondering about Elon Musk.
Yes.
And all of the vicious things, or potentially accurate things, he's been saying about the Prime Minister over here and the state of things and free speech and the way things are going and all of that. How damaging is that really for relations? I mean, Elon Musk appears to be best buds with Donald Trump, the leader of the free world, if you want to call it that. How damaging is it that he clearly detests our Prime Minister and is worried about the direction of travel?
I think it's really interesting. Are the Trump administration going to be able to separate their views on the Prime Minister from the country? In the same way that you sort of ask sometimes, well, do you salute the man or the office? And I think... he said... The Republicans have made very, very clear that, you know, when military are supposed to salute Trump, etc., you're saluting the office, not the man. Can we have the same sort of relationship? After all, Trump is an Anglophile, mother from Scotland, really loved the Queen. I mean, the footage surfaced only last month or so of Trump on his campaign plane, just reminiscing over photographs of him with Her Majesty the Queen.
Yes.
I mean, he
brought a tear to the eye, Tom.
Clearly loves this place, but can he separate that from the Prime Minister, who he may not have such affection for?
Yes, there is a difference. You can love a country, but not the leadership at that current moment. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GBNews. Lots more coming up on today's show, of course. It's an issue that split the nation, and in just a moment, we're going to be having the only debate in town. Should Greg Wallace be cancelled? Don't move, Muscle.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
The Daily Mail now, Josh, and pub landlords have to worry about more than the optics when it comes to offensive banter,
Yeah,
it
this
seems.
is a really big story and important. Pub landlords could have to become banter cops to stop themselves being sued by staff offended by comments from customers under workers' rights reform. So, Labour, when they were part of their election process, they were like, we're going to reform workers' rights, and that all sounds good on paper, but there were issues in terms of how might it affect employees and fear from employees costing them more money. One of these things that they're sort of pushing through, though, is that in the Equality Act of 2010, part of the issue was that if you were offended at work or someone said something sexist or racist, something that affected you, the employer had to take some sort of, they had three chances to kind of take action.
Yeah.
Now, the employer has to should have taken action already. So employees can sue employers. Now, this has a big impact on us because we're comics and we perform in venues. And if some of the bar staff hear a joke that they don't like, then they can sue their employer, potentially, under this legislation.
So it's not punters?
Well, also, it could be like you're at a bar and some bloke is like, oh, I like that top, or whatever. That's not good behaviour. But the point is now that employee could sue their employer.
So, because, I mean, the sort of scenario I was imagining was that a barmaid was being maybe sexually harassed or
That's
something.
what they're focusing in this article, but other articles have gone down the free speech route. Okay. And also venues and universities having lectures. We saw it at, in Edinburgh Fringe Festival and Sadowitz. He had a show cancelled not because of any punters, but because two of the 18-year-olds were working. They were upset.
There was a bar in Brighton, wasn't there? There was a story we covered a few weeks ago. A bar in Brighton threw some people out. Because
exactly. They had turfs on the.
Turfs.
Yeah. GB News, the People's Channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 25 minutes past 1, and we're returning to that topic of the age. The TV chef, Greg Wallace. Should he be cancelled?
Yeah, should he be cancelled? Well, we're joined to have this debate by TV and showbiz journalist at The Mail on Sunday, Sarah Louise Robertson, who thinks Greg Wallace's behaviour was totally inappropriate, and the political editor at Spiked magazine, Brendan O'Neill, who thinks the liberal media fury has been rather excessive. OK, well, Brendan, let's start with you. Why has it been excessive?
Well, the first thing to say is that if it's true, if these allegations are true, then that is bad behaviour. Men should know better by now that you can't go around making sex jokes at work or telling stories about your sexual exploits. That's ungentlemanly, rude behaviour that makes people uncomfortable. So that's the first thing to be said. And also, there might be more to come out on this story. We don't yet know. But with those caveats, I just don't think this deserves the insane amount of coverage and commentary it is receiving. It's on the front page of virtually every newspaper today. It led the BBC News the other day, and Syria, the war in Syria, was pushed into second place. I'm sorry, but my moral compass says that death and destruction in Syria is rather more important than a TV personality allegedly making sexually inappropriate comments to another TV personality. I think our moral priorities are skewed. It's massively overblown. We should wait and see if more comes out and calm down.
OK, over to you, Sarah Louise. What do you make of it?
What's happened to Greg Wallace? Well, what I'm going to say is it's nothing short than a PR disaster. I mean, if that is Greg Wallace's attempt at saving his career, well, it's fallen flatter than a souffle that hasn't been put in the oven. It is just a disaster. What on earth was Mr. Wallace thinking of making that video? He had a tiny, tiny chance of maybe a little bit of redemption if he just held his hands up, said, look, I'm sorry, my behaviour has been really clumsy all these years. I deeply apologise if I've offended anyone working on the show or off the show. And people might have said, right, OK, move on and forget it. But he came out with this attack and just showed himself to be an absolute out-and-out misogynist and a complete and utter dinosaur. And it's got everybody talking. And you mentioned there, Brendan, about what governs the news. Well, this is what is people clicking on this. This is what people want to read about. This is what journalists, we write about this, we deliver the audience what they want to read about, and showbiz sells front pages. It always does. And this is one of those massive showbiz stories, which is just set to roll and roll. But as for Greg's career, well, he's cancelled himself, unfortunately, with that interview, with that video that he did, blaming it all on a section of what he called a handful of middle-class women, middle-aged middle-class women. Well, Greg, you obviously don't understand the female psyche at all. You really
Sarah Louise, I'm not middle-aged yet. I'm not of a certain age yet. But are there really that many women who would be so horrified and offended by Greg Wallace? Who cares what Greg Wallace thinks of women of a certain age? I mean, Sarah, we're stronger than that.
Oh, come on. The women on the programme did. There were some of them who were junior, some of them were older. You know, he had 13 complaints made against him, and he said, this is out of 4,000 people. Well, no. To have a formal warning, to be taken into a formal grievance, it is in itself a major, major red flag. That should tell you to check your behaviour. He was ticked off back in 2018. He carried on. I mean, look, if that is his sense of humour, he was obviously in the wrong place there, wasn't he, at the BBC? Okay. But also, I think it shows what the BBC thinks of its viewers, that they're thinking, oh, let's have this kind of like dumbed down character so we can say that we're kind of like serving a sector of our viewers what they want. I think it's really patronising of the BBC that they had someone like that on in the first place.
OK, let's throw some of this back to Brendan now, because, Brendan, what do you make of this charge that, firstly, he's put his foot in it with his response to all of this? He's gone on the attack rather than saying sorry. Should that condemn him? And secondly, don't blame the BBC for putting it high up their running order. Everyone in the UK is clicking on this story more than anything else.
Well, yes, they are, and I'm included in that number, of course. We're all guilty. We're all guilty of obsessing over this kind of silly story, in my view. But, you know, I think the reason that his video in which he condemned these middle-class women of a certain age, I think the reason that has driven the commentariat off the cliff edge is because they know there's some truth in it. Now, my view is that it's an ill-judged comment. I think he should engage in a period of silence. That's what I would advise him to do. And I definitely don't think he should have mentioned anyone's age. That's not a good thing to do. But it is true that a lot of feminism these days, or what passes for feminism, is often middle-class moralizing packaged up in progressive language. And often the targets of that kind of middle-class feminism is the behaviour of men lower down the social ladder, whose swagger and chatter and jokes these better off, better educated women often don't like. He has a point when he says that. He said it at the wrong time and he said it in the wrong way, but he's not entirely wrong. And I think, you know, the question I keep asking myself is this: why are certain sections of the chattering classes more angry about the fact that Kirsty Allsop had to hear this bloke allegedly say something about sex with his partner than they ever were over something like the grooming gang scandal, which involved hundreds of working class girls who were degraded over years and years and years? You didn't see that trending very much on Twitter. You certainly didn't see sections of the middle class feminism coming out in support of those kinds of girls. There is a class dynamic to this, which I think is undeniable.
And could it be, Brendan, that it's because he's a white middle-aged man?
Well, yeah, you could make
easy
that
target
argument.
is what I'm saying.
He's also middle class himself. He was privately educated, but his school and his parents didn't do a very good job, did they, of telling him how to treat and how to speak to women? It's about being a gentleman.
Sarah Louise, is this the same Greg Wallace who left school at 15, went to work selling vegetables in Covent Garden Market, was abused as a child?
No, I'd read somewhere that he had actually had a really good education, and that this was like a bit of an act that he puts on.
Oh, well, we'll delve into that. That's not what I know of him. I don't think that's true, Brendan, is it?
I don't think that's true. My understanding is he left school very young and worked in a greengrocer's and worked his way up. But let's Google and find out. But the point I would make is that it is undeniable to me that there is a lot of classism in what passes for progressive politics these days. We see it in some elements of feminism, not all feminism. We see it in the fury over Brexit, for example, which all the gammon supposedly voted for. We see it in lots of discussions about obesity in the country, ill-educated people, the low information mob. A lot of what presents itself as left-wing, forward-looking politics is often class hatred in disguise. I think that's undeniable. Now, I'm not saying that is the sole reason that Greg Wallace is being hauled over the coals, but I do think it's part of it.
OK, Brendan O'Neill, and before you, Sarah Louise Robertson, thanks so much for both debating in good spirits this question of the age.
Yes, very interesting indeed. We should highlight that these are unproven allegations and Greg Wallace does deny any wrongdoing.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and there's plenty more to come, including high street shops are feeling the pinch with sales hitting their lowest level since the pandemic. We're taking a look at the figures after your headlines with Katie Bowen.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Your top stories this hour. In the last hour, Downing Street has said that comments made by Greg Wallace on social media over the weekend were inappropriate and misogynistic. The MasterChef star is facing allegations of inappropriate behaviour, and yesterday he said that the accusations were coming from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age. Downing Street added that the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, spoke with the BBC leadership at the end of last week on this matter and also talked about what they called wider workplace culture issues. The BBC is facing questions today after former insiders say that bosses were warned about Greg Wallace's alleged behaviour 4 times. In a statement, the BBC said, "We take any issues that are raised with us seriously and we have robust processes in place to deal with them." Greg Wallace's lawyers say it is entirely false that he engages in behaviour of a sexually harassing nature. A brief bit of breaking political news this lunchtime. Sir Chris Wormold has been named as the new Cabinet Secretary and Head of the Civil Service, taking over from Simon Case, Downing Street has announced. Sir Chris Wormold is currently the senior official at the Department for Health and Social Care, and Simon Case will stand down as the Head of the Civil Service on the 16th of December. More on that breaking news as we get it. To the US, where President Joe Biden has issued an official pardon for his son Hunter, saying he was unfairly prosecuted. Hunter Biden was set to face sentencing this month on gun and tax convictions. He pleaded guilty to tax charges earlier in September and was found guilty of being an illegal drug user in possession of a gun in June. That made him the first child of a sitting president to be convicted of a crime. President Biden said in a statement last night that politics has infected this process, while US President-elect Donald Trump has called the pardon an abuse and miscarriage of justice. Back at home, Sir Keir Starmer is set to reveal his plan for change this week, with the Prime Minister saying it will be the most ambitious yet honest delivery plan in a generation. It's being reported that Mr Starmer will pledge that by March 2029, the NHS will meet its target of carrying out 92% of routine operations and appointments within 18 weeks, a target that has not been achieved for almost a decade. NHS bosses have warned, though, that the target could turn A&E into what they call a war zone. It comes as the Prime Minister has seen an 8-point drop in his net approval rating. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's time for your finance report.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2675 and €1.2064. The price of gold is £2,082.43 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,326 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be quite a cloudy start to the week with some rain at times. There'll also be some brighter weather, but generally turning chillier as we see those brighter spells. That's all because of this cold northerly air stream which is slowly crossing the country, bringing us some wintry showers at times in the north. So plenty of showers around coastal areas, particularly Northern Ireland, Scotland. As I say, these turning wintry mainly across high ground in Scotland. A fair amount of cloud across the central slice of the UK. This bringing in some rain at times, which could be heavy at times too. Generally largely dry and bright across Northern Ireland and southern parts of England too. But it is a fairly chilly day, slightly milder across the south, but feeling particularly cold across northeast Scotland with a brisk northerly wind, making things feel a lot chillier. So as we head into the evening, there'll still be plenty of showers around, still falling fairly wintry across high ground, across the Highlands of Scotland. Still a few showers feeding in around coast of Northern Ireland, but fairly dry inland. And elsewhere, there's plenty of cloud around this, bringing some drips and drabs of rain drizzle at times too. But as we head through into the course of the evening and overnight, we'll see plenty of clear spells merge their way into northern areas. These clear skies and light winds means we're likely to see some frost by the time we reach the morning, may even see some icy stretches and some freezing fog patches too. So do take care if you're travelling through the early hours of Tuesday. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around, a strengthening breeze, so that's going to limit any frost across central and southern areas, but once again it is still going to be a fairly chilly night. So a cold and frosty start across northern areas and quite a chilly day on offer. We'll gradually see a change later into the afternoon as cloud and outbreaks of rain move in from the west. Also some cloud and rain moving into western parts of Cornwall too. But elsewhere there should be plenty of dry weather, plenty of sunny spells, though it is going to be a chilly day for all. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. There's issues either side of the M6 this lunchtime. Now, firstly, southbound, junction 22 to 21A. That's Newton Le Willows heading down towards the Croft interchange. Now, a lane shut there for a breakdown causing queues. And delays of 90 minutes northbound on the M6. So Middlewich 18 up to Knutsford 19. 2 lanes are coned off there at the scene of a collision. Powys, Mid Wales and Carsous, the A470 closed near the A489. There's level crossing failure causing queues. The A1M in Hertfordshire currently closed. Stevenage junction 8 towards 9 at Letchworth, queuing back to junction 7. An oil spillage there and a collision now being recovered. And to Kings Lynn in Norfolk, the A47 between the Saddlebow roundabout and the Tilney All Saints closed and queuing, and that's due to an accident there.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
OK, 1:40 is the time. Good afternoon, Britain. Now, high street shops, they're feeling the pinch because sales have hit their lowest levels since the pandemic, according to a report released today.
Yes, retail experts warned that things could get even tougher as a further £7 billion hit looms from the Chancellor's budget.
So is Labour the Grinch that stole Christmas? Certainly looks like it. Apparently there are fewer jobs as well. You know, during the Christmas period, a lot of shops in hospitality, they recruit more people because it's a busy period. Apparently that's not at the same level as it usually is. So that's a bit depressing. Anyway, we're delighted to be joined by economist and business consultant Vicky Price. Vicky, very concerned to be reading about these figures, about how people are simply not spending the money they normally would in the shops. What's the impact of this?
It's not good for retailers, there's no doubt about that. However, the figures that you've quoted, that you've seen from the survey do not necessarily include, I don't think, what's happened with Black Friday. So the last day, if you like, of proper shopping before the weekend, where the expectation had been, and I think still is the case, that there was quite a lot of spending going on. People have been saving the money to spend towards the end, where there were going to be perhaps even further reductions. But the truth is that if you just look at the retail data, it seems to move with the weather. If the weather is good, people go out and buy various things. If the weather is bad, they don't. And also, if it's cold or hot, they might decide to buy one type of item rather than another. So some of the retailers are feeling the pinch. So it's a pretty variable picture, so we shouldn't generalize too much. But there is no doubt the consumer is quite careful. And yet the interesting thing is that if you look at consumer confidence, it was quite high. It's always negative, but it was quite high by normal standards in July at the time of the election. They all were expecting cuts in interest rates, you know, inflation to come down, a change in government, a bit more certainty. And then as the mood worsened because of the various pronouncements of Rachel Reeves and others, you saw consumer confidence decline quite significantly. So we saw the later months in the summer and then early in the autumn, things really turning sort of quite negative. And then suddenly in November, things improved. Maybe it was the fact that Christmas was approaching and people cheered up a little bit. But of course, what has helped hugely is the fact that inflation has been coming down and therefore real wages are high. All the news about, you know, increases in minimum wage and so on seem to have upped confidence. So we can't necessarily say that December is going to be pretty lukewarm or not. So there is still some hope that the consumer will decide to go out and spend. But if you look at businesses, they're pretty miserable themselves. And you already quite rightly say that they are looking at cutting staff, except for the Christmas period, and investment intentions have been declining as well.
And I suppose part of that is it's more expensive to hire staff, particularly on the lower end of things, where people who had zero national insurance mandated, now employers have to pay thousands of pounds in national insurance to hire someone. And equally, the minimum wage, which sounds great for the people receiving it, is pinching the margins of those who have to dole it out.
Well, that's absolutely true. I mean, if you look at the distributional impact of the changes in the national insurance contributions for employers, then it falls on the lower paid, I'm afraid. And anyone who works part-time, doesn't do very many hours and earns £100 a week is going to be hit, or not directly themselves, but their employer. So yes, it suggests that quite a large part of the economy, such as the retail sector that does employ quite low-paid people, will be affected, and prospects there are not going to be particularly good.
I mean, Vicky, in your opinion, in your expertise, has Rachel Reeves made a big mistake here? Has she done some long-term damage to our economy with this budget?
Well, the long term, we just don't know. I mean, she did need to get some extra money. But the way that it's been done, they went for something easy. So the national insurance contributions increase in terms of collecting money, very easy. You don't have to mess around with wealth taxes, which, of course, may not be collected because people might move out of the UK to avoid paying them and so on. Inheritance tax, you just never know how much of that will in fact be collected, or whether people do other things. With income tax, national insurance contributions, or VAT, you know roughly what you're going to get. So they went for the easy bit, given that lots of other things were excluded from their considerations because they had pledged not to do them, such as income tax or VAT. So they stay where they are. So national insurance contributions for employers were about the only thing that they could do, which would increase their revenues quite significantly. So I'm afraid they were cornered into this position. But in terms of the impact on jobs, the impact on growth, everyone is revising the forecast downwards, both for this year and for next year. And that's not good news.
No.
Oh, well, on that cheery note, Vicky Price, thank you so much for joining us ahead of what I hope will be a happy Christmas. But my goodness me, growth forecast revised down, interest rate forecast revised up, inflation revised up. I mean, my goodness me.
That welfare bill.
Hard to have
up.
Yeah.
Continuing to go up. I was reading the tens of millions of pounds we spend on benefits for people with ADHD now.
Yes.
Disability benefits. I mean, it's quite extraordinary.
And then these people don't count in the unemployment figures.
Crazy.
Because they're technically signed off for medical reasons. So you've got millions of people who don't work, but we're seen to have low unemployment. We don't have low unemployment. It's just the people are signing off sick rather than signing off onto job seekers.
I've noticed a lot of people have been putting up their Christmas decorations in, like, the middle of November. I wonder if that's to boost the mood. Boost the mood. There's been quite a lot of doom and gloom.
Stick with us, because very next up, we're going to be talking about sickness benefits. Yes, apparently they're more lucrative than minimum wage jobs. New research suggesting that claimants can earn £3,000 more annually than workers. Benefit claimants earning more than those in work. That's to come after this.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Following the summer riots and the resurgence of far-right ideologies, the former Education Secretary told peers that reinforcing shared values is now more crucial than ever.
So we're asking this morning, should we teach British values, or would it be a step backward?
Or how do you even start? To debate this now, we're joined by the Campaign for Real Education chairman, Chris McGovern, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen.
Well, I think these days, particularly in schools, it's quite fashionable to look at the negative sides of Britain's identity, particularly British history. Personally, I think I'm very proud of being British, and I think we need to be proud of our country like most other countries around the world are.
As Chris says, Matthew, lots of other countries do it. Heck, you only have to look at the United States, don't you, to see how sort of patriotic they are. Is there anything wrong in trying to instil a bit of that amongst our youth?
I'm just worried it sounds a little bit communist, Stephen, being told what it is to be British. I've got my own personal but very vague views of what British values might be: inclusivity, patience, being able to queue, decency, respect for democracy and the rule of law. But I mean, very many people will have different sets of values. Some people are racist. So are British values racist? You talked about the far right. I think we all know what the far right is. It's sort of violent, xenophobic racism. But if you have, say, I don't know, 3-4 million people in this country who might describe themselves as racist or far right, and they're British, or as British as you lot and as I am, does that mean those values get taught in schools? My worry is it's a little bit communist.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1:49. Now, apparently sickness benefits are now more lucrative than minimum wage jobs.
Well, that's according to new research that says claimants can earn £3,000 more annually than workers can.
OK, well, this has sparked fears that the system is encouraging welfare dependency, as some may game the system to double their income.
Goodness me. Well, delighted to be joined now by the director and founder of Policy in Practice, Devon Gilani. Thanks so much for joining us, Devon. What exactly is this saying? I mean, how can you earn more by not working than working?
Well, there's additional support in the benefit system for people who need it. So if you have children, there's additional support for children. If you have housing needs, there's additional support for your rent. And if you have a disability, there's additional support for your disability. So that's, I guess, the reason why you get more support if you do have a disability while you're on benefits. I think the question you've got to look at is what's the difference between being out of work and being in work? And I think one of the changes I've been involved in, universal credit, is a change for the good. That means people, when they are out of work, as soon as they take that first step into work, they're always going to be better off.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading that in certain towns and cities in this country, you have proportions of people who are currently unemployed who have never worked at all. There are so many people in this country who have just been unemployed their entire life, not necessarily looking for a job, and it is just a lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I think often people, when they've been out of work for a long time, the longer you've been out of work, the harder it is to get back into work, to get back into the habits you need to be able to find work, to get the confidence you need to find work. And I think being able to get that support from your job centre instead of, a place where you turn up to sign on, get your benefits, and then be told that, you have to turn up in 2 weeks' time, something that's much more supportive, that helps them to take the steps they need to actually look for the right jobs in that local area, is going to be a step in the right direction. We saw some moves on that with, a white paper that was out last week called Get Britain Working, which is all about trying to reform job centres so people do get that support. And they're made more welcome to turn up to those places, as well as being a place where, again, if you don't fulfil your responsibility to look for work, you can also have your benefits docked.
But that white paper was only about job seekers. That's our 4% unemployment rate. Not a particularly high unemployment rate, certainly by historical standards. I mean, on unemployment, we're doing fairly well. The problem really for the benefits bill isn't those who are out of work on job seekers. It's those who are not looking for work, not going to job centres because they don't have to, because they're signed off due to medical reasons. And some of these medical reasons can be as light as anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Tom, in that the biggest problem we're facing is the number of people who are getting sick. And I think there's really three main drivers for that. Two of them are kind of real that any government would have to deal with. And that's the fact that we've got an older population that's getting less well. They're more likely to get sick if you're older. You've got the impacts of the pandemic, which in particular is affecting young people. And I think you talked about anxiety, in some cases quite serious, and I've had to deal with that in my own company. I'm sure you have in at GB News from time to time, where, again, you need to give people time off work. But the third one, that is, I think, the biggest one, and that was a policy decision, which is we've now created a binary system where you're either able to work or too sick to work. And this idea that, actually, I need some time off for a bit, and I'm ready to get back into work quickly, that was removed in 2017. So now you have to, when you apply for benefits, you have to, if you get onto them, they become something that becomes quite important for you to hold on to.
Yeah, it's just a bit of a mess, isn't it, at the moment? I mean, it's quite extraordinary just how many people are just economically inactive, not looking for a job at all. Devon Galani, thank you very much indeed. We'll have to leave it there. It's Good Afternoon Britain. Lots more coming up on today's show. Greg Wallace has apologised for any offence that I caused. That's after posting a video saying complaints about his behaviour came from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age. OK, he's finally said sorry.
Goodness me, that next. But first, your weather.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A mix of sunny spells and showers for some, but elsewhere rather cloudy with some rain at times. But it is going to be feeling chilly for all, particularly for northern areas at first, as we bring in a cold northerly stream of air from the Arctic, first bringing in some chilly conditions to the north and then later across central and southern areas. So plenty of showers, particularly around coasts of Scotland at times, Northern Ireland, these falling a little bit wintry at times over high ground. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud, but any rain and drizzle generally easing overnight. But plenty of clear skies to the north means it is going to be turning cold here, quite a widespread sharp frost. We may even see some icy stretches by the morning too. But elsewhere, with some cloud and a slight breeze, that's going to stop things turning too frosty, though it is still going to be chilly across central and southern areas. So by the time we wake up on Tuesday, plenty of frost across Scotland, perhaps even some freezing fog patches and some icy stretches. A bit more cloud in the west with a few showers feeding in here. Could be slightly frosty across Northern Ireland too, but elsewhere a mix of cloud and clear spells and still a few showers around coastal areas. But for all of us, it is going to be a cold start, generally brightening up through the day, plenty of dry weather and some sunny spells. But it is gradually going to be turning cloudier from the west, particularly western parts of Scotland, and just moving into Cornwall later with some outbreaks of rain just edging into the west too. This could be heavy at times across western parts of Scotland, may even start to see some snow across higher ground. But for all, it is largely going to be a chilly day, highs of around 7 to 8 degrees in the south. Then through into the evening, we'll continue to see that rain spread into the north, falling as snow, mainly across hills, though we could see some falling to lower levels too, may even see some across the Pennines for a time as well. And towards the end of the week, largely unsettled with some rain and strong winds, turning mild before cold again into the weekend.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely.
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash. We've made loads of winners this year, and you could be our next.
Hi, I'm Angela from Wigan, and I won £30,000 with the Great British Giveaway. It happens to people like me.
For your chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Monday, the 2nd of December. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Greg Wallace says sorry. Yes, the TV host has now apologised for any offence caused after releasing a video over the weekend saying complaints about his behaviour were from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age. Downing Street says the comments were deeply inappropriate and misogynistic.
Goodness me, it goes on. And a laboured relaunch. It's reset time for Keir Starmer after low growth, high migration and a cabinet resignation. The Prime Minister tries to start over with his plan for change and insists growth is still the #1 priority for his government.
Pardon me? Joe Biden issues an official pardon for his son Hunter, despite promising he wouldn't before the election. Hunter Biden was set to face sentencing this month on gun and tax convictions. Now, Donald Trump brands the move abuse and a miscarriage of justice. Is he right?
Well, Greg Wallace, he's issued an Instagram apology.
Oh, no.
It's not going very well for him, is it?
I don't know if anyone's advising him, who's advising him, but that video where it was clearly unscripted and he was saying, oh, this is all coming from middle-class women, if he'd have left it at that, if he'd have tried to sort of less clumsily talk about how he grew up speaking a very different sort of language to other people and all the rest of it, and it was sort
in a self-deprecating way.
He grew up as a market trader. He left school at 15, sold vegetables. Everyone spoke like that. If he'd have sort of done that and left it at that, talked about himself, not about other people, perhaps he would have found himself in a less precarious position.
Yeah, I think the of a certain age, that was just a bit catty, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was a bit...
He went on the attack rather than on the defence. And in these
catty.
Situations, you just can't go on the attack.
No, I mean, lots of you have been getting in touch. I think a few of you agree with what Brendan O'Neill was saying earlier, that this has been overblown. and that it shouldn't be the #1 story. But, of course, Sarah Louise Robertson said, well, it's what people are clicking on. And BBC Stories, he is a huge name. He's all over the BBC. I mean, for the BBC to say, you know, this is an independent issue because it was an independent broadcasting, whatever you call it.
No,
it's BBC, isn't it, really? And with the Hugh Edwards stuff and all the other separate things that have gone on at the BBC, I mean, perhaps it's a continuation of them not dealing with things quick enough.
Feeds into a narrative, but I think one of the reasons why people are clicking on it as much as they are, why it's gone as viral as it has, is because people are divided on it. You get very strong opinions on either side. You get people saying this man was completely inappropriate. No one should say anything even close to sort of sexual comments or innuendo or anything else in a workplace. And then other people saying, hang on, are you not allowed to make any jokes about sex at all ever? And you get this big clash of views over what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, and different people put the line at different places.
Yeah, and particularly when you look at things like grooming gangs or the fact that rapists go unconvicted in this country or the way that sexual harassment is rife among some communities and all of these things. But Greg Wallace, we must bring him down. Cancel him.
Yeah. Well, what do you make of it?
Skewed priorities, perhaps, we have as a country. I don't know. Anyway, send your views, post your comments. Lots of you being in touch. We will read some out very shortly indeed. But let's get the headlines with Katie.
Tom, Emily, thank you, and a very good afternoon. It's just gone 2 o'clock. These are your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. Breaking news now, and as you've been hearing, Greg Wallace has apologised for any offence that he caused after posting a video saying complaints about his behaviour came from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age. Mr Wallace went on to say that he wasn't in a good headspace when he posted the message, adding that he has been under a huge amount of stress and felt very alone. He said he will now take some time out. His apology comes after Downing Street labelled the comments as inappropriate and misogynistic. Downing Street added that the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, spoke with BBC leadership at the end of last week on this matter and also talked about what they called wider workplace culture issues. The BBC is facing questions today after former insiders say bosses were warned about his alleged behaviour 4 times. In a statement, the BBC said, "We take any issues that are raised with us seriously and we have robust processes in place to deal with them." Greg Wallace's lawyers say it is entirely false that he engages in behaviour of a sexually harassing nature. To the US, where President Joe Biden has issued an official pardon for his son Hunter, saying he was unfairly prosecuted. Hunter Biden was set to face sentencing this month on gun and tax convictions. He pleaded guilty to tax charges earlier in September and was found guilty of being an illegal drug user in possession of a gun in June. That made him the first child of a sitting president to be convicted of a crime. President Biden said in a statement last night that politics has infected this process, while US President-elect Donald Trump has called the pardon an abuse and miscarriage of justice. A brief bit of breaking political news this lunchtime. Sir Chris Wormold has been named as the new Cabinet Secretary and Head of the Civil Service, taking over from Simon Case, Downing Street has announced. Sir Chris Wormold is currently the senior official at the Department for Health and Social Care. Simon Case will stand down as the head of the Civil Service on the 16th of December. The Prime Minister has thanked Simon Case and welcomed Mr Wormold, adding that he joins at a critical moment in the work of change this new government has begun. We'll have more on that breaking news as we get it. Sir Keir Starmer is set to reveal his plan for change this week, with the Prime Minister saying it will be the most ambitious yet honest delivery plan in a generation. It's being reported that Mr Starmer will pledge that by March 2029, the NHS will meet its target of carrying out 92% of routine operations and appointments within 18 weeks, a target that has not been achieved for almost a decade. NHS bosses have warned, though, that the target could turn A&E into what they call a war zone. It comes as the Prime Minister has seen an 8-point drop in his net approval rating. Parliamentary Under-Secretary Alex Norris spoke to GB News earlier on.
Won an election in July based on commitments that we made to the public about the change we want to see for our country and they want to see for our country. What we'll be setting out in the days to come is what that change looks like. You know, I think it's reasonable that the government of the day should want to be really candid and honest about delivery. It's not been something that we've seen in recent years, but we are. So that's what we'll be setting out. It's perfectly consistent with our approach at the election, and we think it's the right way to do in order for the public to be able to hold us to account.
A police officer has been charged with causing death by dangerous driving over a crash in which a moped rider was killed. Metropolitan Police Constable Ian Brotherton, who's 32, will appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on Wednesday. He's also accused of causing death by careless or inconsiderate driving. He's been charged over the death of 26-year-old Christopher de Carvalho Guedes, whose moped was hit by a police car on an emergency call in Enfield, North London, on the 12th of October last year. And just briefly, the Met Office has warned that freezing temperatures are set to return this week after a mild weekend of weather conditions. It could plunge to as low as -7 degrees Celsius in some parts of the country this week, with extensive frost expected. The Met Office has said that there is some potential for disruption, with the wintry conditions bringing a risk of icy stretches and some dense freezing fog. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Tom and Emily.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past 2, and we're going to kick straight off with that breaking news in the last few minutes. Greg Wallace has now apologised for any offence caused in that video over the weekend, in which he said complaints came from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age.
Life comes at you fast, doesn't it? Let's take a look at the brand new video released a little while ago.
I want to apologise for any offence that I caused with my post yesterday and any upset I may have caused to a lot of people. I wasn't in a good headspace when I posted it. I've been under a huge amount of stress, a lot of emotion. I felt very alone, under siege yesterday when I posted it. It's obvious to me I need to take some time out now while this investigation is underway. I hope you understand, and I do hope that you will accept this apology.
Well, do you accept his apology, Tom?
I think it's a clot. But I also do get the point that there is an investigation that's ongoing, and a lot of people are jumping to conclusions before that investigation's finished.
Yeah, and I mean, as Brendan O'Neill, to bring up Brendan again, said, he's obviously deciding that he should engage in a period of silence and reflection.
Yeah, I think basically whatever
and not
he
slag
says,
off middle-aged women.
Yeah, I mean that's the unforced error of unforced errors. But whatever he says at this point will obviously be analysed to the nth degree. So given that there's a process going on, the best thing is to say, look, I'm going to comply with the process and not say anything more. I mean, and that seems to be what he's belatedly decided to do.
It's a shame. I always liked Greg Wallace on MasterChef. I thought he was quite funny.
Do you think we're going to get people just...
quite like blunt people on the telly?
Devoid of personality now?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, Jeremy Clarkson, I mean, he's been in a bit of hot water in the past. I mean, I remember that column he wrote about Meghan Markle.
Yes.
And he got a lot of heat for that. There were a lot of people saying, oh, is he going to get cancelled? Is he going to get cancelled? And he didn't. He didn't. He's got another series of The Clarksons Farm. He's still writing his column for The Sun.
But that was Amazon, right, where they're concerned about a bottom line. He did get cancelled from the BBC. He got kicked off Top Gear.
Oh, of course, yes.
And Top Gear got a lot worse.
Yeah.
Now, his behaviour was not good, right? I mean, there was a fight over at a canteen with someone providing the food, and he was angry about the food. He sounded really entitled and completely in the wrong. But then that kills Top Gear as a show. I mean, the new Top Gear, I tried watching about 5 minutes of it. It's impossible to watch.
Is it woke?
It's terrible. It's like the whole point of the Clarkson-era Top Gear was it was politically incorrect. It was incidentally about cars rather than primarily about cars. It was just a lot more fun. And then they just made it terrible. And so I wonder if people like Jeremy Clarkson and Greg Wallace are wiped from the television landscape, or at least the traditional broadcast television landscape. I mean, is that sort of a death knell for it?
Well, apart from GB News, I mean, it does appear as though lots of broadcasters are going for cookie-cutter presenters who will never reveal any opinion that could possibly be deemed controversial to anyone. And that's how it goes now. Everyone's scared of being cancelled.
Well...
We're not scared of being cancelled, though.
Certainly not. Certainly not. Not at this programme. But let's go live now to outside the BBC Broadcasting House. Speak to GB News reporter Adam Cherry. Adam, this has likely sent shockwaves through the corporation.
Yeah, I mean, we talked earlier, didn't we, Tom, about that, as you put it, unforced error of that comment, middle-class women of a certain age. You know, was that the best PR strategy, regardless of the facts here? He's, of course, denying all the claims, and there is that investigation which we spoke about. I would suggest he was perhaps nudged to go in this direction, because in the last 90 minutes we've heard from Downing Street. Downing Street have waded in on this row before the investigation has even concluded and said the allegations are deeply concerning. This is the Downing Street press spokesman today. The Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, has sought assurances that there are robust processes in place for complaints, and that middle-class women of a certain age comment was deeply inappropriate and misogynistic. So here we are. He's now released his apology, a little bit too little too late, but obviously Downing Street getting involved makes this, well, certainly turns up the heat, doesn't it? And now we just have to wait for that investigation to conclude. But in the meantime, there are at least 4 allegations, 4 complaints dating back to 2012, and it's looking pretty ugly.
Now, I understand, of course, that the BBC is our national broadcaster and that we all pay for it through the licence fee and tax and everything. So I suppose you could argue that it's something that the government should comment on, but it does seem awfully unnecessary, doesn't it?
Well, it turns up the heat, and as I said, this investigation, we don't have the full fact check. We do have the allegations, yes, and there are several of them, and there appears to be a pattern, and the BBC are in a bit of a muddle over it. But Keir Starmer wading in is another kettle of fish, I would suggest. I'm a bit surprised they've gone so far so soon on this. I suppose they want to appear robust, but again, it seems quite a lot quite early.
Well, Adam Sherry will stay with you, of course, and go back to you with any updates there outside the BBC. But for now, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, shall we now get the thoughts of former BBC correspondent Danny Shaw? Danny, by now you will have seen both Greg Wallace's comments about women of a certain age, middle-class women of a certain age, being the reason that, well, being the flood of complainants, and then also this apology video. What's going on here in your view?
In my view, he posted that original comment sort of in the heat of the moment without sort of taking any advice. And suddenly there has been obviously this flood of complaints. It's clearly added insult to injury. I presume that some wise people who are friends of his or family or his agent or his advisor have said, Greg, you have got to now apologise and lie low for a bit because you're just making things worse. And he's suddenly realised the error of his ways and he's made that apology. And I suppose that he will take that advice and just sort of not comment while the investigation takes its course. So he's probably just about rectified that particular situation. Although, you know, when you post a comment like that, it does tell you something about the person, doesn't it?
I suppose one of the big concerns here is how big this story has grown before the investigation has concluded, that so many people have weighed in when actually no one knows the full evidence here. This is a dangerous moment, I suppose, not just for Greg Wallace, not just for the BBC, but also for due process.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you have to obviously have regard to process. It's right that there's an investigation and that everything is bottomed out. But the number of complainants, what they're saying, the fact that some of them are, you know, certainly people, let's say, with authority and a track record, and so on, suggests that there is, you know, that some of those comments certainly, you know, would appear to be accurate. In what has been said, and there's a sort of pattern of behaviour that it suggests, but it's quite right that there's an investigation to understand exactly what's taken place. I think what's really worrying about this is that this is not an isolated case for the BBC, for my old employer. You know, we can go back, there's a long list, you know, most recently Jermaine Genus, then before that we had the issues around Strictly. Then we had Hugh Edwards. That's a different level altogether because there's a criminal conviction there. Russell Brand, Tim Westwood, and then going back further to disc jockeys from Radio 1, Savile, Dave Lee Travis, and Stuart Hall, and so on. So there's a long line of celebrities, of famous people who, in my view, some of them have been indulged, put on a pedestal, complaints have been ignored. And that is a real issue for the BBC. It's got this sort of cultural review at the moment. That has to lead to meaningful change, because we had all this before after the Savile affair, and still we get this welter of complaints against well-known people that simply aren't dealt with, aren't taken seriously.
Yeah, Danny, if I'm not mistaken, it's the same company now conducting this review into behaviour at the BBC that did the post-Savile review into behaviour at the BBC. It seems like a bit of a rehash of an exercise that took place over a decade ago. I mean, is it really going to provide any meaningful change, given the last one clearly didn't?
Well, that is up to the managers and the bosses at the BBC. That's not about the company that's doing the review. They present their findings and recommendations. It's about the BBC grasping the nettle and saying to some of its big stars and its talent, although that phrase is sort of Tim Davie, the Director General, doesn't like it. It's saying to them, no more. We are not indulging this behaviour anymore. We're not putting you on a pedestal, and you will be treated like every other member of the crew, every other producer, reporter, staff member that's working there. You will be all treated the same. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you're paid. I don't care how big your ego is. This behaviour will not be acceptable, and you will be out. Imagine if someone had made a complaint against a staff member or a crew member working on MasterChef. Do you think that they'd still be in a job? Do you think that they'd still be working there? Of course not.
Yeah, I mean, you make a very good point there, and I think you're probably right on that one, that some of these presenters are treated like godlike creatures who can't be touched and are given every privilege, and they can behave very badly as a result of that, a sense of entitlement, lots of fans and the like, and lots of support within the BBC and other broadcasters. But, now I want to word this carefully, is there a chance that perhaps we're sanitising things too much, that perhaps there was a bit of a clash of cultures within this programme between Greg Wallace and some of the contestants who may have happened to be middle-class women of a certain age in the contest, that him, sort of working-class geezer type who says some, crass jokes, that perhaps there is this bit of a clash and that people like that aren't welcome at the BBC anymore? I don't know.
Look, everyone can make a crass joke, and I'm sure we've all told inappropriate jokes or jokes at the wrong time and got it wrong. You can do that once or twice, perhaps, but there appears to be a pattern of behaviour. And secondly, these jokes aren't funny and they're deeply offensive. And when you do that once, you learn your lesson, or you should learn your lesson. And it would appear from these reports that he hasn't. And, so it's not just about bawdy behaviour or the cheeky working class chap or anything like that. It's not about that. It's just about stuff that's just deeply offensive and insulting to people, and sexist and misogynistic, and that can't be tolerated. I mean, we all want different personalities. We don't want everyone to be the same. We want people from different walks of life who've got good senses of humour and all the rest of it, personality bursting out. We want that. But we don't want people who cause offence like that.
Yeah, it's just some people take offence very, very easily, and other people have a higher threshold for offence. And it's so hard to... We don't have all the facts here, so we don't know at what point it is, but it's easy to see how anyone could offend people who are perhaps take offence more easily.
I think the line has been crossed, and I think we know when the line has been crossed. And that's what I would say. And it's not just one person just talking about it. It's multiple people talking about it.
OK, well, Danny Shaw, former BBC correspondent, thank you very much indeed for talking us through this story. I must say, a lot of you are getting in touch, sort of concerned about the level of publicity this is having and what impact it might have on his mental health. Of course, the investigation hasn't been conducted fully yet. We don't have a result whether these accusations are, in fact, true. And, yeah, I mean, I can see that point.
Yeah, well, it is a story that no doubt will go on, and we should highlight that these are unproven allegations at this stage, and Greg Wallace continues to deny any wrongdoing.
OK, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show, including President Biden. He finds himself in a bit of hot water after pardoning his son Hunter over gun and tax charges, despite the fact he said he absolutely would not during the election campaign. The latest reaction from across the pond.
Martin Daubney. Weekdays from 3 p.m.
A pensioner has been sacked as one of Santa's helpers for sending anti-Labour social media posts. So it looks like Santa is going to have even more work to do this Christmas. And joining me now is the former Santa helper, Paul Cleary. Paul, marvellous. You've still got your old hat on there and your beard. Wonderful to see. But Paul, this story, pardon the pun, is absolutely crackers. Tell us what happened to you.
It's unbelievable, to tell you the truth. I've been accused of sending racist and or derogatory remarks on my Facebook page about the Labour government. I received a letter from the trust where I volunteered as Santa. The posts in question about Labour cancelling Christmas. I've upset the board, members and volunteers, and are deemed inappropriate. As you're aware, a lot of time and effort is put into organising the WAF Christmas Festival, which is done by a small group of dedicated volunteers.
They even banned you from making donations to the Montgomery Hall Food Bank, a local food bank. They said they didn't even want your food.
That's right. That's right. And then in the next breath, they're asking for Christmas donations.
Without going into any details, I understand that the post was about comparing Keir Starmer to an elf. Is that right? So was it an elf and safety issue?
It was an elf with Keir Starmer's face on it in front of number 10, but the 10 was the I and O in idiot.
Right. I mean, you know, it's not the kind of thing that Santa would normally say, but it's a free country, and for Santa got the sack.
Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel. If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just coming up to 25 minutes past 2, and in a shocking U-turn, Joe Biden has issued a pardon for his son Hunter, saying he's been singled out, branding cases against him as a miscarriage of justice.
OK, well, the 54-year-old faced up to 17 years in federal prison, this over tax and firearms charges.
Well, delighted to be joined now by the former Democratic nominee for US Congress, Qasim Rashid. Qasim, is this what's going on in the United States? Political prosecutions from either side of the aisle?
Well, thanks for having me. And I think if you look at the initial charges filed against Hunter Biden, and they were basically at a plea deal, every U.S. attorney would tell you that this is not enough to pursue. It was pretty clear they're going after him as a way to attack Joe Biden. And frankly, I don't know why Biden waited. I don't know why he even made this promise that he would never intervene or interfere when I think we all knew that he would. And so I'm actually glad that he has. And I think that when you try to equivocate between him and Trump, you see two very different scenarios. We see a scenario in Biden protecting his son from what's pretty clear prosecution, malicious prosecution. And we see somebody in Trump who himself has, pardoned overt white supremacists and war criminals and people convicted of war crimes by military tribunals. And so, the comparison between the two doesn't really make any sense to me, but that's what we've come to see.
Why in the case of Hunter Biden is it blatant political persecution?
Prosecution. I think if you look at the actual charges and the fact that they were near a plea deal, and you compare it to the I mean, countless other similar cases around the country, you won't find a single other example of any U.S. attorney or any federal prosecutor seeking those kinds of a 17-year punishment for what Hunter Biden is guilty of, and he absolutely is guilty of that. So it's pretty clear that he's being singled out, and this is not a qualitative opinion. You can actually compare the other cases and find that nobody else is being prosecuted at this level of mendacity as Hunter Biden is. And so I think Joe Biden did what a father would do in that situation, and that is protect his son from malicious prosecution.
Could you not make the case that the New York case against Donald Trump, the Stormy Daniels case about borrowed money and whether it was correctly classified as such, I mean, could you not make the case that that was clearly a political prosecution brought forward by political enemies of Donald Trump, and perhaps Democrats would have been better off if the New York case had never happened and only sticking to the Florida and the Georgia cases?
No, I'm so glad you brought up those cases because, again, those are examples where we can compare the crimes committed by Donald Trump to that of Hunter Biden. And what Hunter Biden did is stupid and in my view, deserves punishment. But with Donald Trump, the tax fraud that he committed, the election fraud that he committed, actually harmed hundreds of millions of people, actually caused tangible harm. And that's harm for which other people have gone to prison. And so I want to make that very clear distinction, that where I just pointed out that you don't really find examples of people going to prison for 17 years for what Hunter Biden did. You absolutely find example after example after example of people going to prison for what Donald Trump did and was convicted of on all 34 counts by a jury of his peers. So no, I don't think there is much of a comparison. I think we see two very different scenarios and two very consistent standards of justice applied equally to Donald Trump as to other people.
In New York, they literally changed the law to adjust the statute of limitations so that this case could be brought against Donald Trump. I mean, that's not equal justice.
I'm not familiar with how they adjusted the statute of limitations, so I don't want to speak about something that I don't have knowledge of. But again, the beauty of this country is you have due process of law. You had the opportunity to plea bargain out. Donald Trump had access to all the money and lawyers in the world. And 34 counts, a jury of his peers convicted him. But I want to make one point really, really clear for the American people here, and just for people in general. If the actual outrage is pardoning a family member, Charles Kushner, who is the father of Donald Trump's son-in-law, was convicted by a Republican AG of major fraud. Chris Christie called it one of the most grotesque prosecutions he's ever had because of the severity of the crimes. Donald Trump pardoned him and gave him an appointment to France as the ambassador. And then we talk, Clint Lawrence, Matthew Goldstein, I think is his name, Eddie Gallagher, all men in the military who murdered innocent civilians. Their own fellow soldiers testified against them and got them convicted of war crimes for murdering innocent people, and Donald Trump pardoned them. And so it's rich for me to hear Republicans or anyone criticize Joe Biden pardoning his son for a crime.
Yeah, but it's not that. It's not just that, though, is it? It's that he promised that he wouldn't.
Crimes that were violated by Donald Trump.
Is that he promised that he wouldn't? He stood there in front of the American people and said, "I'm not going to pardon my son." And then what does he do? He pardons his son. Is it not just the fact he lied?
I completely, that's what I led my comments with. That I don't understand why he even bothered saying that he wouldn't pardon his son. I think that was silly and short-sighted. And I think that if you want to criticize him for saying that I'm not going to do it and then doing it, criticize him. And I think that was a dumb thing that he did, and he should be criticized for that.
OK, well, Qasim Rashid, former Democratic nominee for the US Congress, thanks so much for joining us here on Good Afternoon Britain.
I just think Joe Biden's using exactly the same argument as Donald Trump has used. There's his own prosecutions. Well, let us know what you make of it all. Ian says it's pardoning his own son is a conflict of interest. This should be done by a panel. Such decisions should be made by panel.
Or should pardons exist at all?
Well, yes, that is a question.
Should political pardons exist? I mean, it's an interesting one.
It's a bit corrupt, isn't it?
It's a quirk of the United States system, but it's and all the time, and it's usually in the lame duck period when the president is either at the end of his term or has been voted out, and you've got those few months. And very often there are just some random pardons of people who have been found guilty. The country accepts are guilty, but through one reason or the other. And I mean, if you don't want people to be found guilty of things, I mean, very often it's drug offences that people are pardoned for. Well, then change the drug laws if you think they should be pardoned.
Yeah.
Don't choose your specific sympathetic cases and say, oh, this person has had a really tough time.
So true.
Change the blooming law.
So true. So true. Noel says Republican crime bad, Democrat crime good. There you go. People are seeing this as double standards. You know, you can't stop them from seeing it that way. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. OK, this. Now, Jaguar, their ridiculously woke advert that absolutely no one liked. Well, they can now reveal their new concept electric car to go with that rather bizarre advert. It's been leaked online. This is it. Pink. Bubblegum pink, would you say?
I think it looks quite cool.
Barbie pink.
I was expecting a lot worse than this.
I'm sorry, Jaguar.
Cybertruck about it.
Jaguar is a British heritage brand. What on earth is this?
It's the future, Emily.
It's absolutely
Get on
hideous.
board.
It's hideous.
Look, they come in turquoise as well.
OK, well, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Are you a fan? Let us know after the headlines with Katie Bowen.
Tom, Emily, thank you. Your top stories this hour. Breaking news now, and as you've been hearing, Greg Wallace has apologised for any offence that he caused after posting a video saying complaints about his behaviour came from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age. His apology comes after Downing Street labelled the comments as inappropriate and misogynistic. Downing Street added that the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, spoke with BBC leadership at the end of last week on this matter and also talked about what they called wider workplace culture issues. The BBC is facing questions today after former insiders say bosses were warned about his alleged behaviour 4 times. In a statement, the BBC said, "We take any issues that are raised with us seriously and we have robust processes in place to deal with them." Greg Wallace's lawyers say it is entirely false that he engages in behaviour of a sexually harassing nature. Here's what the MasterChef star had to say after making that apology a short time ago.
I wasn't in a good headspace when I posted it. I've been under a huge amount of stress. A lot of emotion. I felt very alone, under siege yesterday when I posted it. It's obvious to me I need to take some time out.
To the US, where President Joe Biden has issued an official pardon for his son Hunter, saying he was unfairly prosecuted. Hunter Biden was set to face sentencing this month on gun and tax convictions. He pleaded guilty to tax charges earlier in September and was found guilty of being an illegal drug user in possession of a gun in June. That made him the first child of a sitting president to be convicted of a crime. President Biden said in a statement last night that politics has infected this process, while US President-elect Donald Trump has called the pardon an abuse and miscarriage of justice. Back at home, Sir Keir Starmer is set to reveal his plan for change this week, with the Prime Minister saying it will be the most ambitious yet honest delivery plan in a generation. It's being reported that Mr Starmer will pledge that by March 2029, the NHS will meet its target of carrying out 92% of routine operations and appointments within 18 weeks, a target that has not been achieved for almost a decade. NHS bosses have warned, though, that the target could turn A&E into what they call a war zone. It comes as the Prime Minister has seen an 8-point drop in his net approval rating. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More from the newsroom in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be quite a cloudy start to the week with some rain at times. There'll also be some brighter weather, but generally turning chillier as we see those brighter spells. That's all because of this cold northerly airstream which is slowly crossing the country, bringing us some wintry showers at times in the north. So plenty of showers around coastal areas, particularly Northern Ireland, Scotland. As I say, these turning wintry mainly across high ground in Scotland. A fair amount of cloud across the central slice of the UK. This bringing in some rain at times, which could be heavy at times too. Generally largely dry and bright across Northern Ireland and southern parts of England too. But it is a fairly chilly day, slightly milder across the south, but feeling particularly cold across northeast Scotland with a brisk northerly wind, making things feel a lot chillier. So as we head into the evening, there'll still be plenty of showers around, still falling fairly wintry across high ground, across the Highlands of Scotland. Still a few showers feeding in around coast of Northern Ireland, but fairly dry inland. And elsewhere, there's plenty of cloud around this, bringing some drips and drabs of rain and drizzle at times too. But as we head through into the course of the evening and overnight, we'll see plenty of clear spells merge their way into northern areas. These clear skies and light winds means we're likely to see some frost by the time we reach the morning, may even see some icy stretches and some freezing fog patches too. So do take care if you're travelling through the early hours of Tuesday. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud around, a strengthening breeze, so that's going to limit any frost across central and southern areas, but once again it is still going to be a fairly chilly night. So a cold and frosty start across northern areas and quite a chilly day on offer. We'll gradually see a change later into the afternoon as cloud and outbreaks of rain move in from the west. Also some cloud and rain moving into western parts of Cornwall too. But elsewhere there should be plenty of dry weather, plenty of sunny spells, though it is going to be a chilly day for all. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Scotland, firstly, the A77 closed between Ballantrae and Mark. There's a fallen tree no way through. Bradford, West Yorkshire, the Shipley-Airedale Road between Leeds Road and Canal Road has been closed off at the scene of a collision. Very slow southbound on the M6, Newton Le Willows 22 to the Croft interchange 21A. Still a lane shut at the moment for a breakdown. Still queuing in Worcestershire as well this lunchtime. Northbound M5, M50 up to Worcester. Junction 8 to 7 follows an earlier collision there. Southbound M5, Portishead 19 to Clevedon 20. There's a vehicle having a tyre change. A lane closed on the A1M northbound Stevenage at 8 up to Letchworth at Junction 9. Closed and queuing. There's been a collision and an oil spillage being dealt with there this afternoon.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
OK, welcome back. Now it is Advent, and as we count down to Christmas Day, we're hearing from church ministers across the country. Each day they have a special message for you to celebrate the festive season. Shall we take a watch?
The GB News Advent Calendar. Day 2.
My name's Marcus. I'm a priest in the Church of England. Imagine trying to walk through a room that is completely dark. As you try and feel your way around, you're bumping into things, tripping over things, and making a complete mess in the process. Without light, we cannot see the truth about things. We end up getting confused, disorientated, and lost in the dark. Maybe this is how you feel in a spiritual sort of sense. When we are spiritually in the dark, we don't know who we are, where we are from, or where we are going. Evil becomes good, and good becomes evil. As we approach Christmas and all the Christmas lights go up, a light has dawned in the darkness. With the birth of Jesus Christ, he came to earth to shed a light on the truth about God and about life, which means we no longer have to walk in darkness. Jesus tells us in John chapter 8, verse 12, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never have to walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. This is Emmanuel, God with us.
That's lovely.
You can see all of our special Advent messages as Christmas approaches by visiting gbnews.com/Advent. Merry Christmas.
Yes, are we going to have one every day?
We are.
That's fantastic.
Every single day.
Good stuff.
It's very Christmassy.
It's very Christmassy. I'm loving the set, by the way.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not sure if you can't
magical.
see it quite now because we're just on the TV
I wonder
screen.
if there it is.
There we go.
Oh.
I think it's better than last year.
I think so. A million times. I mean, this is the thing about GB News. Every year it gets better. Every year we get more professional, more people watch, and my goodness me. I think, actually, now's the time to make a point, actually, about... don't often talk about other channels on this show, but...
Well, don't start.
But through the whole of November, GB News got more average viewers than Sky News for the first time in our history, for the full month. And that just sort of demonstrates the growth of the channel, the professionalisation of the channel. So thanks for being a part of it.
Yeah, things are looking good. I mean, the economy might not be looking good, but GB News is looking good. So thank you for watching or listening. If you're listening on radio was good too.
Absolutely.
But should we talk about Jaguar?
Something that's more controversial. Jaguar's electric GT concept car. It's been leaked online hours ahead of its official reveal at Miami Art Week.
Yes, the design previews the future of Jaguar's EV lineup, set to launch from 2026. So are you a fan of this pink monstrosity then?
So, to be fair, they're not all pink. They seem to come in various colours. I believe we've got a picture of one of the turquoise models that we'll be able to show in just a little bit. But looking at the design of the car, it's quite smooth. I think it's quite futuristic. These things could be on Mars. I mean, if I imagine the future, this is the sort of car that I would imagine whizzing around silently and electrically. And I kind of want the future to look like the future.
I don't. I quite like heritage, tradition, old-fashioned looking things.
You can buy a heritage car then.
Yeah, I guess Jaguar. People are disappointed because Jaguar is no longer going to be making petrol and diesel cars.
Yeah.
They're putting absolutely everything into electric vehicles, hugely expensive electrical vehicles.
Yes.
I heard that over £100,000 some of these things will cost.
Well, premium
as a
cars.
base, premium cars. Who is their audience? Of course, we are talking about this because of that controversial advert. We aren't just doing a broadcast about Jaguar for no reason. But yes, that advert, which I don't think it really divided the nation. It seems everyone hated it. Even The Guardian hated it.
It was just
there it is.
Bizarre to have a car advert with no cars in it.
What does create exuberant mean?
Just people wearing odd clothing that's in lots of different colours. I mean, I guess the point is all of these cars are going to be in different colours. But, I mean, this is just so... I think it actually feels quite dated, this advert.
Yeah, it does.
This feels like sort of mid-2010s. And it just doesn't feel sort of the 2020s, which I think people would have preferred, just cars whizzing along quickly, just a bit more... Well, the car looks quite muscular, actually. I mean, like...
No, it's putting a finger up to the people... I mean, that advert, anyway, is putting a finger up to the people who traditionally bought Jaguars. People who don't necessarily want a multicoloured bubblegum pink car. People who want something that's, a bit classy, traditional, heritage, very British.
Isn't the problem, though, that no one is buying Jaguars at the moment? So
yeah, but I don't think it's because of this, because they didn't do enough of this.
Well, I don't know.
I think it's because the cars weren't good enough for one reason or another.
Well, they've decided to do a complete rebrand. And to be honest, I think this is a fair point to make. Companies that refuse to change, refuse to update, are companies
you just
that
said it's like the 2010s, so they're going in reverse.
Yeah, no, I think the first ad was terrible, but I'm keeping an open mind about this car. I think if they'd have brought the car out rather than done a peculiar advert with lots of models wearing peculiar items of clothing, and instead just showed us this car, perhaps everyone would have a very different view of it.
I don't know, Tom. Can I reveal to the nation that you're learning to drive?
Oh,
I just did.
You just did.
So this is what he's going to get.
Well, no, I'm whizzing
you can
around.
Afford it.
I'm whizzing around in a Ford, actually, at the moment, a Ford Puma. And it's quite a nice...
Is that your driving instructor's car?
It is indeed. It's very nice. I'm enjoying it a lot. I'm managing... Well, trouble is I'm in London, so I'm just zipping out as far from London as I can possibly go, just so I don't have to crawl around at 20.
I can't imagine where you'd drive that car. I mean, you'd look like a buffoon driving that around London.
Do you know what?
I think it's only suitable for, like, Dubai or California.
That car is exactly built for both Dubai and California.
Yeah, naff.
That is exactly what it's built. But that's where the money is.
Yeah, but it's naff.
I mean, I think we forget in the UK how much richer America is than Britain.
Yeah, but people like... British heritage is one of those things that everywhere in Asia loves, America loves, other countries love, and Jaguar are ruining it by producing this sort of cheap, sort of American-looking...
Maybe it's a novelty, right? Maybe if someone wants sort of a classic Morgan or something, you'd buy that, right? You wouldn't buy a modern car that is designed to look like an old-fashioned car. That's a very, very niche product line.
I think maybe customers of the previous Jaguar, the sort of classy Jaguar, are being pushed towards Land Rover.
Yeah.
Because, of course, they own that too.
Well, same company.
Yeah. So, if you don't like this rebrand, you just have to buy a Land Rover, eh?
Well,
a little bit more?
Someone online had an idea about this original advert where sort of all of these prancy people were prancing around and they thought that maybe in the 2020 style of things, using AI. This is what someone on the internet did to that advert. Take a look. And there you have it. There's a Jaguar running in, disrupting the sort of Fashion Week style situation.
Yeah, but I thought that might be actually what Jaguar were going to do. Be like, gotcha! This is actually Jaguar. You know, Jaguar's not about this silly, you know, whatever this is. Don't know what you even describe it as, some kind of woke fantasy.
I don't know. But yeah, a Jaguar running through, sort of disrupting. That's great. That's thinking differently.
Yeah.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain here on GB News, and there's plenty more to come on today's programme.
Yes, we're taking a look at reports that the world's richest man, Elon Musk, is considering handing Reform UK, the party, $100 million in a bid to make Nigel Farage the next Prime Minister. I mean, Elon Musk does want Reform to win, doesn't he? That's to come next.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Donna Ida, who joins us now. And Donna, you look spectacular in your gorgeous denim jumpsuit.
Thank you.
And accessories. And it's important, isn't it, sometimes, just to keep things simple?
I always keep things simple. I travel a lot, I work long hours, and I don't want to think too much about what I'm wearing. So for me, one and done is perfect. Good accessories, fresh hair, nice makeup, and you can go anywhere, including GB News when you didn't know what was happening.
There we go.
Perfect.
Welcome.
Straight off the plane.
Can we ask you some of our top denim questions?
Yes.
Because Stephen Dixon, the presenter of The Breakfast Show who's just on, said that double denim to him is an absolute no-go.
Oh, what does he
Is that true?
Don't have him on again, darling.
OK. We're telling me fact.
I love double denim.
Really?
I love it. I think it is so cool.
Does it have to be a different
I was going to say double denim, same colour.
I like the... For me, I actually do like the same. Think Saint Laurent 70s. There's an amazing one that we're doing that's going to look great on you in the new season. The Joan Jean, we've got the City Slicker shirt. Oh, it's amazing. If it's done well, it's perfect. And I like it in a paler blue, but a good mid to dark. Very chic.
You go.
No, well, I was just thinking, little old me, not quite sure
You'd look amazing
what to wear
in
this
it.
morning. How
was a
did
bit
guys
stressed.
pull off denim?
For me, if I was dressing you, I would have put you in a pair of jeans this morning with his amazing jumper. Gorgeous watch.
Black, blue?
Black denim I do like. Men don't like it so much. Men like charcoal denim.
Oh, I don't like grey.
Charcoal. I love grey, and the best seller for men is charcoal denim.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. 10 to 3 is the time, and over the weekend, reports emerged that Elon Musk is considering handing Reform UK a $100 million war chest, all in an attempt to make Nigel Farage the next Prime Minister.
So is this fake news or a genuine proposition? Should we talk to Chief Political Editor at the Financial Times, Jim Pickard? Jim, do you think this is an actual offer here that could be on the table?
So I noticed that the author of the original story was very careful to phrase it in quite a kind of levity, light-hearted kind of way. They were saying they'd heard it secondhand. So business people, conservatives, had heard that it was possible that this donation could be on the way. I think that if the reporters in question had really firm evidence that this was something being discussed by Elon Musk and Nigel Farage, they would have written it an awful lot harder. But that, of course, doesn't mean it's not impossible. It could be one of those ideas that when Elon Musk hears it, he thinks, that's a great idea. It's not impossible. It's very interesting. The other issue, of course, is that British electoral law does mean that it's quite hard to donate to British political parties if you're not a UK citizen/resident. Now, of course, the original article suggested that he could donate through his company X or Twitter, through the UK version of that. I suppose that's possible. And the £100 million to the richest man in the world, of course, is chump change. So I've got no doubt that if Elon Musk wanted to do this, he can, of course, afford to. But is he currently planning to do so? I've no idea. And I don't think the people who wrote the original news story know either.
So it could be one of these sort of silly season stories that for some reason has found its way outside of August and is in a serious time of the year.
He certainly cares enough, though, doesn't he?
He does seem to write a lot on Twitter, on X, about his frankly loathing of the new UK government.
Yeah, and I think one reason people are taking this story seriously and discussing the idea of him donating to Reform UK seriously is because Elon Musk is showing a considerable interest in what's going on in British politics. He seems to be tweeting at strange times in the night in the USA about British politics. If anything, his views might even be a little to the right of Reform UK. Interestingly, I was told that Nigel Farage and Elon Musk were introduced to each other by Donald Trump not actually that long ago. They don't have a long-standing relationship per se, but of course they have mutual friends. Of course they have a similar worldview in some respects. And the thing about Reform is that, you know, it hasn't had huge donations in the past. It's not been heavily professional. It's the kind of political party which does have fairly strong support in parts of the country. And if you were to put a load of money into it, that would be frankly terrifying for the Conservative Party and very worrying for the Labour Party as well. There was a poll that came out yesterday in Wales, which was fascinating to me because it was a poll for the Welsh Senedd, which isn't having an election for another 18 months, but it put Plaid Cymru, the Welsh nationalists, in the lead, and then 1 point behind was Labour and Reform, and the Conservatives, I think, were down on about 19%. And so there is some support for Reform in Wales, parts of the country, and of course that, in theory, could be turbocharged by an injection of money. Who knows?
And that's extraordinary. It could put Reform UK as the second largest party in the Senate once you sort of look at the proportional system and the constituencies as well. I mean, completely fascinating dynamic were that to be the case. Although, of course, a poll quite a long way out.
Yeah, well, Jim Pickard, thank you very much indeed for your time. You're from the Financial Times. I mean, he did tweet that establishment parties are going to get crushed at the next election. So it's not, that strange to think that he might put some money behind it.
Although, as Jim says, pretty hard for an American to donate to a British political party. The law is pretty tight around that. It'd be interesting to see, if it happens, what avenue is used. Well, don't go anywhere. Thanks for watching us here on Good Afternoon Britain. It's actually flown by today, but Martin Dornby is up next, so stick around. Martin's on from 3.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A mix of sunny spells and showers for some, but elsewhere rather cloudy with some rain at times. But it is going to be feeling chilly for all, particularly for northern areas at first, as we bring in a cold northerly stream of air from the Arctic, first bringing in some chilly conditions to the north and then later across central and southern areas. So plenty of showers, particularly around coasts of Scotland, at times Northern Ireland, these falling a little bit wintry at times over high ground. Elsewhere, a fair amount of cloud, but any rain and drizzle generally easing overnight. But plenty of clear skies to the north means it is going to be turning cold here, quite a widespread sharp frost. We may even see some icy stretches by the morning too. But elsewhere, with some cloud and a slight breeze, that's going to stop things turning too frosty, though it is still going to be chilly across central and southern areas. So by the time we wake up on Tuesday, plenty of frost across Scotland, perhaps even some freezing fog patches and some icy stretches. A bit more cloud in the west with a few showers feeding in here. Could be slightly frosty across Northern Ireland too, but elsewhere a mix of cloud and clear spells and still a few showers around coastal areas. But for all of us, it is going to be a cold start, generally brightening up Brightening up through the day, plenty of dry weather and some sunny spells, but it is gradually going to be turning cloudier from the west, particularly western parts of Scotland, and just moving into Cornwall later with some outbreaks of rain just edging into the west too. This could be heavy at times across western parts of Scotland, may even start to see some snow across higher ground, but for all, it is largely going to be a chilly day, highs of around 7 to 8 degrees in the south. Then through into the evening, we'll continue to see that rain spread into the north, falling as snow mainly across hills, though we could see some falling to lower levels too, may even see some across the Pennines for a time as well. And towards the end of the week, largely unsettled with some rain and strong winds, turning mild before cold again into the weekend.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook